Welcome to the Planning and Zoning meeting on Thursday, May 24th, 2007. George, can you have us do a all rise?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's good.
Yeah, he missed it.
I missed it.
Okay.
More than the meeting.
A couple of things here. Falcon Trace on the agenda, the second item, has been pulled, and I guess until the applicant wants to come back. We are going to go ahead and pull Pine Valley, the item on consent. And my understanding is there are a couple of people here that want to talk about that. Have approval of the minutes. Anybody have any changes?
Move to adopt as presented.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, Pine Valley, request for preliminary plat approval for 19-lot affidavit of exemption project to be known as Pine Valley. Pellegrino and Michelle Barone, owners, W.F. McCain & Associates, Inc., agent, located on the north side of 5th Street Southwest between 74th Avenue and 82nd Avenue, zoning classification A1, Ag 1, unit per 5 acres, land use designation AG1, agricultural 1 unit per 5 acres, density 1 unit per 5 acres. Who's doing this? Stan?
No.
Just a second. Okay.
Okay, all right. I knew my voice was bad tonight, but we'll see how long it holds out.
You need to remember we have that switch. Yeah, we can turn him off.
Yeah, just give me the sign and I'll stop. For the record, Stan Bowling, Planning Director, and I'll just briefly go over the items since it's been pulled off consent. This aerial shows the site where 19 parcels by the affidavit of exemption process are being created and platted. What's before you is a preliminary plat. Most of the lots are about 5 acres in size, and one is just under 10 acres. And so there's no increase in the density that's allowed on the site. It's zoned agricultural. It's on the east side of 82nd Avenue between 1st Street Southwest and 5th Street Southwest. We heard from some Aerodrome residents yesterday, Aerodrome being on the west side of 82nd Avenue, about a half mile to 3/4 of a mile from the site, and their runway going in this direction here. In terms of the layout of the affidavit of exemption subdivision, this is all information from your packet. Let me lighten that up just a little bit. The project is proposed to have an internal street off of 1st Street Southwest. That's graded and maintained by the county. An internal street ending in a cul-de-sac. A conservation area mostly for uplands, but also some wetlands here in the southwest corner. And again, some parcels are much larger than 5 acres. The rest are right at about 5 acres in size. Some of the corner parcels are larger. Also, dedicating 50 feet of right-of-way along 5th Street Southwest, although, again, there's no access proposed off of 5th Street Southwest. And staff's recommendation is for approval with conditions relating to the right-of-way and the upland and wetland set-aside that's shown on the preliminary plat. Now, just in terms of the regulations that apply, again, this is an affidavit of exemption, so they're exempt from any standard subdivision requirements. Also, the airport zoning requirements in our Chapter 911 do not apply to this area. They apply to, by ordinance, to the Vero Beach Airport, Sebastian Airport, and New Hibiscus Airport. My understanding from a conversation I had with one Aerodrome resident yesterday was some concerns about some type of traffic pattern that they have at this private airstrip that may go over part of this site, and their concerns about asking for what's been described as a nuisance easement or an navigation easement or aviation easement. Again, staff's understanding is that that is not a requirement And we don't know what the applicant's response is. I think this has all come up pretty suddenly for the applicant, but they are here and they can speak to it. And as you said, Mr. Chairman, I think there are some aerodrome residents that'd like to speak.
Can you point out where the project is on the map there?
Right, again, the project here, this L-shaped site, and aerodrome over here, about a half mile to 3/4 of a mile to the west.
Okay.
Their airstrip going in kind of a north-south direction.
Okay, it does seem kind of weird that the air traffic would be having a problem with that site.
Was probably on a downwind for the final on line and landing. But Stan, what on the affidavit of exemption is 19 the edge? Is that the
Yes,
end?
it is.
So 20, and we would have to be a subdivision.
20, they would have to have, the only really difference, the main difference here is that at 20, they would have to have paved access. In other words,
Right.
First Street Southwest would have to be paved, and it's probably
Right. Okay.
too much for that.
All right. Would the applicant wish to speak? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Bill McCain, WF McCain and Associates, 19th Court, Vero Beach. Stan did a great job of presenting it. As he also said, this was just brought to our attention today. I would like to see what the discussions are with regard to any concerns from the aerodrome people before we place any commitment on what we're going to do. We had intended to put notification within the homeowner documents that the airport existed, and that was at the request of my client. She wanted to know everybody buying a lot there knew it and signed off on it as part of that purchase, so it couldn't come back to her or create problems from the neighbors. As far as an easement, we'll see if it becomes something necessary. And if you all have any questions, I'm certainly available.
Okay. Does somebody representing the aerodrome group wish to speak?
Isn't there a height on these easements? Isn't there like a pattern height there?
There are really three basic type of regulations. One is height, and one is noise, and one is more of a clear zone area. And in this case, heights, even if this were regulated by our airport, and it was, the 35-foot height limit in this location would not be more restrictive than the heights regulations we already have.
Okay. Okay, the public hearing is open for anyone wishing to speak.
Swear
State
in.
your name and address for the record, please.
Be sworn.
Sworn in.
Oh, right, I'm sorry. Let's do this for everything tonight. We have quite a few quasi-judicial items on this agenda. Anybody that is going to speak tonight on any of these projects needs to be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'm E.J. McClure. I'm a lawyer, 395 Newport Drive. For the record, that's spelled Nieuport. Vero Beach, Florida, 32968. First, I would like to say that there's only one objection that I'm aware of to this project. We applaud the developer and the landowner for complying with the existing land use requirements and sticking to the 1 unit per 5 acres. We think that that's consistent with our airport development. There is one issue, and that is that this property is clearly within the noise footprint of our airport. And, I don't know, 6 months ago or so, I was before you folks arguing a lot more vehemently against a rezoning project just to the north of the aerodrome. That was ultimately resolved primarily by the use of a navigation easement. It's kind of a funny-sounding buzzword. It hasn't been around too long, but it is now used throughout the state and throughout the United States in the vicinity of airports for several things. One, of course, to guarantee that the airports may continue to use the airspace without objection, as is already granted us by the federal aviation regulations and by Florida state law. There are some excellent benefits to all parties concerned from a navigation easement. It does several things. The one that I drafted and is now recorded in the public record for the project just to the north of the aerodrome, one of its primary requirements is that the landowner developer provide a noise disclosure statement to each purchaser. Already we have documents filed of public record that put these landowners on constructive notice that the airport is there, the kind of operations that we have, and the noise required. So they are on constructive notice already. But I will tell you from 30 years of experience, a landowner who gets caught up in a legal situation with only constructive notice is left in the lurch because they did not have actual notice. What this requires, the navigation easement requires, is that the landowner provide this noise disclosure statement, which is actual notice to the purchaser that he is buying property within the vicinity of an airport where he will be impacted to some extent by airport noise.
Did Mr. McCain say that they were doing that?
He said that there was a statement of some sort. I apologize. I just found out about this yesterday, so I have not had an opportunity to speak to them yet. I'd be willing to after this meeting or whenever it's convenient for them. And hopefully this is something that we can negotiate. The property owner benefits, the county benefits, and the aerodrome benefits. And the reason we all benefit is because it essentially precludes litigation by any resident who purchases one of these homes, one of these lots, if they're offended by the noise. It's been held up in court. It's a motion for summary judgment, and the case is over with. It's very short. So none of us would get involved in protracted litigation if someone complains about noise after the fact. So we all have something to gain. It costs the landowner nothing.
Okay, so what you're looking for is just for us to add the requirement for constructive notice to be given to all
I'm not sure you
property
can add a
purchasers.
requirement, but a recommendation.
Recommendation, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think it was actual notice rather than constructive notice. And I think that he indicated something to that effect, so I don't see where that's a problem.
Okay.
Bill? My understanding is that this is a protection mechanism for your owner.
That is part of it, yes, sir. And that was why they wanted specific language within the actual homeowner documents notifying them of that. I was just looking at the flyover map that I was made privy to a couple of minutes ago by one of the aerodrome residents, and the majority of the actual flyover area goes over our mitigation and set-aside areas within the subdivision. An easement per se over that particular portion of it I don't think would be an issue, but I think that the owner is comfortable with the legal notice within their documentation and possibly even an additional notification if it would be appropriate, and I would have to defer to Will on that as to putting something even as a note on the plat to be utilized as notification of the locale of the area.
The main thing here, you don't have an objection.
No.
You're planning on doing something similar to this.
Correct.
So you think you can work that out. Okay.
Correct, sir.
Thank you.
Correct.
Sure.
I did notice you do have the driving track there between the airport and the subject property. You might consider that as well.
They did look at that, and that also, as you come in to even look at the property to purchase it, all of that becomes blatantly obvious, which is so nice about this piece. It's not like somebody could conceal it.
Okay.
Margo Sadnikovic, 7575 First Street Southwest, Bill. I would like to add just one little detail besides the airport. Right here, if you can see on the map, is Schumann's residence and his truck, so maybe that will be another good idea to add, besides the noise from the airplane, also the noise of the right, yeah, absolutely. Thank
Their
you.
benefit.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing. pleasure.
I'd move approval as presented with the addition of a recommendation that they seek actual notice about the racetrack and the airport in some form of documentation that would make it obvious.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, just as a follow-up to that, what I'll do is ask the aerodrome folks to give us an area where, if there are any future residential proposals, as a courtesy, we'll ask the applicant to contact them. Again, it's not a requirement, but we'd rather not, and I'm sure they would rather not have this, addressed, the day before. So we'll coordinate with the residents on that.
Sounds good. Okay, next item on the agenda
For everybody?
is Vero Estates, request for major site plan and preliminary plat approval for a 58-unit multifamily residential development to be known as Vero Estates. Vero Estates LLC owner, Schulte Biddle and Stoddard LLC agent, located in the northeast corner of County Road 510 and 66th Avenue intersection. The zoning classification on this property is RM6, residential multifamily up to 6 units per acre, land use designation L2, low density residential up to 6 units per acre. And the density on this property is 5.91 units per acre, and this is quasi-judicial.
Thank you, Chairman Bruce. My name is Brian Freeman, Indian River County Senior Planner, and this is an application request for major site plan and preliminary plat approval. The subject site is located at the northeast corner of the intersection of County Road 510 and 66th Avenue. The site is zoned RM6 multifamily residential, and that is also the zoning of the land that is to the north and the east of the site. South of the site is a mix of both multifamily and single-family residential zoning, and then to the west of the site is a mix of single-family residential and agricultural zoning. This is an aerial view of the site and the surrounding area. As you can see, there are existing single-family parcels both to the north and the east of the site, and then to the south and the west of the site there are both undeveloped land and larger sized parcels. And this is a view of the site from a little closer in, and as you can see, there's an existing man-made pond that's in the northwest corner of the site, and as part of this development, a portion of that pond is proposed to be filled in. Also on the site, well, what's shown on the site in this picture, but actually is no longer existing on the site, are 2 single-family houses, and both of those were demolished a few months ago. Both of those are just off of County Road 510. And the site actually is a former citrus grove, as you can tell by looking at this picture. The project area is just under 10 acres and consists of 11 different buildings that will be divided up amongst 58 townhome units, and this results in a density of about 5.9 units per acre. And the entrance to the site is going to be located off of 66th Avenue, and as part of the design of the entrance will be included a northbound right turn lane from 66th Avenue into the site. And based on the project's traffic impact study, it was determined that the project will need to contribute towards the intersection improvement that is planned for that intersection of County Road 510 and 66th Avenue. For stormwater management, there will be 2 additional ponds built on the site, and a smaller pond is located in the central part of the site, while the larger pond is in the eastern portion of the site. And then along the site's 510 and 66th Avenue frontages is required a 25-foot wide Type B buffer with a 6-foot opaque feature, and this opaque feature will consist of a combination of a berm and a hedge. Other required improvements for the site include right-of-way dedications for 66th Avenue and County Road 510, and those will be dedicated prior to site plan release. In addition, sidewalks are required along the site's frontages on those two roads as well as internally throughout the site. And the site is required to set aside at least 7.5% of the site area towards green space and or recreation area. The amount that is proposed is above that. It's actually 10.5%, and this includes the swimming pool tract, the wetland mitigation area, and also some common green areas dispersed throughout the site. One other aspect of this application is a preliminary plat request, and for site plan projects that are to be platted over, they're subject to the requirements in Section 913.096 of the Land Development Regulations, and essentially that section requires that the lots for each unit not be much larger than the area needed to serve the lot, and any improvements associated with that unit immediately adjacent to it. Each of these units will be a fee simple unit or a townhouse, and the final plat for the project will need to be recorded prior to the conveyance of any of the units. Based on this analysis, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission grant major site plan approval for Vero Estates with the conditions listed in the staff report, and also staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission grant preliminary plat approval.
Okay, Brian. Two questions. Is a left turn lane required there?
Southbound.
I mean, seems pretty high traffic. I didn't look at the traffic counts closely. I'm sure George did.
What's that now?
The traffic counts.
I don't see it.
And also this 5.91, that seems really high.
Southbound left turn lane, I think, is a significant requirement for this one.
Right, it would be more important than the right-hand northbound. Because, I mean, all of Sebastian is emptying into, that's Schumann coming down. And that intersection is broken.
I know you've only got 58 units, and I know that's what you're thinking, this isn't a requirement, but when you take a look at that road, this is a major requirement for this complex.
Yeah, the left turn into the front.
Didn't we adopt requirements about a year or two ago that lowered the threshold for left turn lanes? And it was based on some peak hour number?
Yeah, I remember something about that.
Chris?
Chris Moore, Assistant Public Works Director. Will is correct. We did adopt some new left turn threshold standards. It reduced the number of peak hour left turns down to 25 in some cases. So if you had a development that generated 25 or more left turns in the peak hour, you would be required to put in a left turn lane under certain ADT or daily traffic conditions. This development was checked, and in their traffic study, they did not generate enough to warrant a left turn lane. It was something less than that.
But this is the major road to go to Publix from there.
That's correct.
And they're going up to Barber Street and off, and that's the major shopping area, and they're going to be coming back.
Right.
Other than 510 and 512, this is the major traffic problem in the entire North County, this intersection.
The intersection of 510 and 66th Avenue? Right?
Yes, the next worst intersection, I would think, is 510 and 512.
The left turn that we were just speaking of would be a left turn lane at their entrance.
Right, southbound left turn.
Right.
Because all that traffic is backed up from 512 to Schumann.
Yeah, they did not meet the criteria for a left turn lane.
Cannot change the regulations on the fly for a particular project. We have standards that apply to site plan, and each project is going to be different. They're going to have a different number of units, a different number of trips generated, but we set in our code thresholds for such turn lanes, and if they don't pass or trip those thresholds, you can't apply those any off-the-cuff or ad hoc requirements to the project. If they meet our requirements in all circumstances, they have to be approved.
Okay, what are the county's
If they fail in
plans?
any respect, they can be denied.
Then what are the county's plans for that road? Because this is ludicrous. And I understand what you're saying, Will, and we even discussed the idea of having a little bit of leeway there on roads like this. And can you tell me, is the county doing anything?
It's still a matter of distribution, isn't it? that's traffic study? I mean, maybe somebody,
Then
the
the county
applicant
needs to
can
do it.
explain this.
Right, yeah, it's a matter of how they distribute their traffic. In the case of Vero Estates, they had so much traffic going north on Schuman or 66th Avenue, so much going south. And you got to remember, we're looking at the PM peak hour traffic turning back into the development. So it wouldn't be, if you're talking 58 townhomes, they're going to generate 30 or so PM peak hour trips.
Still too late.
So it would be a substantial number, but it's going to be less than 25.
Chris, is there any correlation on that kind of a study between that has the distance to the intersection as a criteria?
No, when they look at the left turns going into the development, they're just looking at the entrance way to the development, not the distance from
Not the
51066. I mean, when we look at their driveway locations, yes, they have to be a certain distance away from the intersection. There has to be enough separation so that their traffic turning in and out of their driveways doesn't interfere with the intersection at 510 and 66.
Will, within the criteria you just described, though, with distribution being what it was, and that this board has questioned the studies in the past, if we don't believe or reject the traffic study as is that not allowed?
Well, I don't think you can really accept or reject a traffic study outright. You'd have to have some reason. What the traffic summary in your backup says is the peak hour, the PM peak has 67% entering and 33% exiting. I'm in no position to say whether that's a proper analysis or not, and I'm not sure you are either. I think if someone presented some traffic engineering testimony to the effect that there was something wrong with this study, you could rely on that, but you're not hearing that.
Chris?
Yes, their traffic engineer just handed me their peak hour turn counts, and they show 6 southbound left turns heading into their development during the PM peak hour. 14 northbound rights, 6 southbound lefts.
I think that the concern is the road is still 2-lane, and when someone stops to turn left, traffic has to wait until it clears. And so there's, whether it's a matter of, a moment's hesitation or not, in a busy area, perceived busy area, we're not in from an engineering standpoint, perceived busy area, I think you have a problem. And that's what I think you've just heard. Now, whether that's real or not, and whether, as Will said, whether we can say yay or nay because of that, and
right. Well,
I don't know, but I
the
think
ability
that's the perception.
right,
anyway.
the ability to turn left into the development. When they have a volume like this, if you're thinking that 66th Avenue is too busy to find a gap in traffic, that's why when we did our left turn thresholds, we worked the Main Street traffic number into the chart, so that if you get a heavier volume on the Main Street, your threshold for requiring a left turn comes down. So in a matter that is taken into account into the charts, but with such a low left turn volume, they didn't meet the requirement for a left turn.
Chris, what is the schedule for the intersection to be improved?
We've got, it's in our 5-year plan. It's going to be done as part of the 510 4-laning project and the 66th Avenue 4-lane project. They're both going to begin, we're about 60% with the construction plans for both of those projects. We'll be beginning construction probably within the next 2-3 years.
When that's done with
When's
left
Chris?
turn lane?
2 or 3 years.
We're talking about improving the intersection now?
That's correct.
To begin construction. Yeah, I want to come back to that. You've been talking about LDR requirements specifying, establishing the requirements for when you have a left turn lane?
That's correct. The left turn lane at the project.
And the LDR, what does the LDR say?
I'd have to grab those.
I mean, does the LDR offer any discretion or any judgment? Or is it just a formula in the LDR?
Does the applicant wish to address this issue, or is there any leeway on this with the applicant?
We're talking about 150 feet from the intersection, right?
A little more than
150 feet, and you're going to have 2 lanes going north, one a turn lane, one the other lane, and so you've got a left-hand lane facing 2 lanes of traffic. That is bumper to bumper for sometimes half a mile to a mile on either side.
Can I ask Chris a question before you start?
Sure, no problem.
Chris, am I understanding correctly that there are 58 units, so you got about 100 cars, and during peak hours, there will only be 6 cars coming from the north to enter that left turn? Is that what they mean?
No, there's 58 units, but there's not 100 cars associated with that. There would be something on the order of 30 or 40 PM peak hour trips. Some would be going into the development, some would be going out. But the volumes that they show on their traffic study show that 6 southbound left turns would be coming in from the north.
Okay.
For those new guys of you on this committee, I'll say my famous old words: the formula doesn't work. Formula's broken.
We find it hard to believe. I guess you can see this entire commission is kind of incredulous about
Being
this.
as kind as we can be.
I drive it every day.
Yeah,
Oh my God,
there's
it's
a lot of
horrible.
traffic that goes down that road. It's
crazy.
I mean, you're talking 3, 4, 5 lights you sit through to get through the intersection. And all that traffic's backed up behind you, 30 and 40 cars. Mr. Biddle? Please understand, I have nothing against your project, so can you help on this? Is there anything you can do to help on this?
Joe Biddle, Shoki Biddle and Stoddard, 1875 Tarpon Lane. It's hard for me to say there's a solution to this problem. One of the major problems with this is a southbound left turn lane into the site is a huge cost. Right turn lane is nothing compared to a southbound left turn lane. I'm not sure if Chris answered with the new construction plans for 66th Avenue. I'm not sure if there's another lane they're adding or not. You know, Chris? Or?
Is there anything we could do for a quick fix for just a couple of years until this gets done?
Well, and
Widening it?
I don't think this project is going to be finished for a couple of years. So I've talked to Joe about it. My partner, he's actually the engineer, and he couldn't make it tonight. But he says, you know, they're probably assuming that the county will have the improvements done before this project's done. So I think it's probably going to be about the same time.
And
I
I would
certainly
have a
understand the safety features.
I may have a tendency to agree with you, except I've been up here too long to know. I'm still waiting for a left turn lane that Mr. Paladin was supposed to have put in 5 years ago. His money is still sitting on the table. We were supposed to put that in 5 years ago.
Oh, there you go, being realistic again.
I'm sorry. I really have nothing against this project. Is there anything anybody can do to make this work?
Well, with the county's widening project on both 66th Avenue and at 510, we're going to be extending that widening north of the 510 intersection right in front of this project. So as part of that, we'll be putting in the left turn lane at that point. But that would be part of the county's construction. So if the development did nothing, we would be following up at some point and widening that roadway in front of the development to include a left turn lane.
But it would be better to get rid of the right-hand lane going north and to put in a southbound left lane. I mean, that would be a solution to the problem anyway.
Well, the problem with putting in a left turn lane is, and Joda can attest to this, is when you put one in, because it's in the middle of the 2 lanes, one northbound, one southbound, you've got to carry that transition some distance away from the driveway. So they're talking, instead of a right turn lane where you just put in a 50-foot transition and 300-foot, 12 feet of asphalt, you have to put in probably 1,000 feet or so of additional asphalt, and then you've got to bump out the outside lanes to match that transition. So it's a fairly costly endeavor.
But the right-hand lane is actually going to make the problem worse, because the person won't be able to turn left, and it's got to facing 2 lanes of traffic to make a left-hand turn.
No, generally the right turn lanes, when they're added, make things better.
Not sure in this case it would be.
No, I see your point on that, too. I agree with you.
Oh, Will, do I read this LDR correctly, that if there's fewer than 20 peak hour left turns, you cannot require a...
I don't know if you're reading, I don't have it in front of me.
I have it in front of me, and it says 20 or more. If the ADT, average daily traffic on on the road, which in this case would be 66th Avenue, is greater than 10,000, then if the projected peak hour left turns are 20 or more, you can require a turn lane. In this case, they're only 6, so they're obviously less than 20.
I just, we up here have a hard time believing that 6 is the number.
No, I understand.
Very difficult for us to believe that number.
The formula is broken.
I don't see any discretion in that code language. I also heard somebody say it was 150 feet from the intersection, and it looks like it's at least 500 feet to the driveway.
Well, it's between two bad intersections, two heavily trafficked intersections.
That are going to get much, much worse. Chris, did I understand you right? The county is going to put in a left turn lane when they do the widening?
Yes, when we do the widening of both 510 and 66, we'll be extending that widening north to include a left turn lane. It'd be like a scramble lane, a center left turn lane in front of the development.
Okay.
On the intersection improvements, where do they stand? Have they been funded? Are the plans complete for them? Is there a construction schedule set?
We haven't set a construction schedule yet. We're in the middle of design and right-of-way acquisition for both 510 and 66.
You have the right-of-way acquisition?
No, we're in the middle of right-of-way acquisition for both 510 and 66.
And when is it projected that the improvements will be completed?
We'll be beginning construction in 2 to 3 years, and we don't have a set timetable for construction end yet.
This raises an issue like we had on another project where it seems like the county is, the applicant, it's either hold up the applicant or somehow force the county to make the road improvements that are required. You're recommending approval of this project. You're saying there's a link deficiency, an intersection deficiency, and you don't have any firm schedule for completing the improvements that are required. So we're just going to continue backing up our roads. It's not fair to the applicant. Can we condition the approval on the county getting on the stick and doing what they have to do?
No.
Okay, we're at an impasse here. I'm going to go ahead and open this up for public comment. Does anybody from the public wish to speak on this project?
I'm Jerry Swanson, 3001 Ocean Drive, Vero Beach. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't know any of the applicants, or I do know the engineers, but again, I was here the night that Mr. Christopher is referring to the Century Plaza at 58th and 60 about the intersection that was turned down by planning and zoning and went to the county commission and was passed. I just want to remind you, I know that intersection, I understand the issues, but if we can't believe the professionals we hire and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars doing our projects, you've got to give us the opportunity to make these things happen. And you can't capriciously change your mind because you personally have a feeling about this. We've been through this before. We're going to continue to be through it, but and believe me, Mr. Christopher, I support you. Let's put all the pressure we can on the county, because there's all kinds of places that we can see this need. But again, please be realistic about the development and the developer and the amount of money and time, and it seems to me that he qualifies, and staff has approved it, so thank you.
Mr. Swanson, before you leave, I want to ask you something. I believe the numbers. We're talking 39 peak hour trips, and I believe that most of those trips will be southbound in the morning and northbound at night. So I understand staff's reasoning for the northbound right turn lane. And it is not the applicant's fault that we have a traffic problem at that intersection.
Correct.
So he should not have to pay for the fact that we have a traffic problem at that intersection.
Right, I agree.
All right, but why, give me a reason, and I'm not being facetious about this at all, please understand that. What would you recommend that we do to get this project approved, but to still handle some of the additional problems this project will cause?
Well, you know what, if there was an easy solution, I'd be the first to jump up there and tell you. But I can only speak of my own experiences about a hand turn lane on 37th Street on a project we were doing on Indian River Boulevard. And I was told we needed at 37th Street to put another left turn lane in. If you realize right now there's a left turn lane and there's two lanes. One is a continuous green going on the outside. To do that, we had to, by right-of-way, widen the road, put an extra turn lane in, and the cost was over $1 million for that issue. A 58-unit project can't afford to widen the road on both sides to make that left turn lane, believe me. If the county wants to put up the money and make that a requirement, you know, most developers would cooperate with it, but we're sitting in meetings on a daily basis trying to get roads done and trying to come up with money to do this, and there isn't the money from the county to be able to do these things. So, and we're in a real bind here. We spend all day here, all afternoon here, in impact fee meeting. You know what, the impact fees, the cost, last year, the county had impact fees of $900,000. This year, they have $145,000 or $155,000 in impact fees. We can't run the county on impact fees like this. You know, you can't build roads. It's a catch-22 situation, but it's not helping the situation by not allowing these projects that qualify, meet all the requirements, by not letting them go forward and pay their impact fees and bring money into the county. Donna, I wish it was easy. I wish it was an easy solution, but it's all money. That's what it is. And I think you're right. The left turn lane is an important part of this. But according to the traffic studies, it's not necessary. And if you try and force the developer to widen the road, in the first place you run into a problem when the county goes to widen the road a year and a half from now or 2 years from now. You know, the design, you've got all kinds of design issues and things like that. It's not an easy situation.
Well, I agree with you. The
Wish I could
developer
have an
should not
answer.
be made to do this because he is having a very small impact on the southbound left turn. But I think the county has, I don't know, help me with this, guys, please.
Well, your concern is a major thoroughfare. I mean, it really is a busy road, so it's a simple flow of traffic. And, you know, Jerry, it's probably one of the first times I tend to agree with Donna. I think you probably do need a left turn lane up there. And I understand the rules probably as well as anybody, and I would probably be in favor of doing this right off, but I think something needs to happen because it's not good to, until we get a bigger road up there, it's not good to stop traffic in an area like that on a turn. But, you know, this project needs to go ahead. I don't have a problem with it, but the reality is they probably need a left turn lane to make it flow.
The problem that I see with this being new on the commission is the same as the Century Town, which I voted for because staff recommended it. And I think that some issue needs to be forced with the commission so that we don't find ourselves in this kind of a position. I don't know what the answer is, but I don't think that an applicant should come in to the county and deal with staff on an ongoing basis, put the money up front for what they intend to do, meet all of the requirements, and go with the recommendation that staff gives, and then get in front of us, and we want to, we vote it down sometimes because we feel, and legitimately feel, that there are problems with it that are outside the bounds of the points that the applicant went through. I think we need to get away from that in some way. I don't have an answer. Certainly it probably involves a lot of money, but we need to do something so we're not in this position and the applicant is not in this position. It's not fair to them to invest this kind of money and then run up to into this kind of a problem.
It's not fair for the people driving that intersection.
I understand.
Day after day having to wait to go through that thing. I mean, you have to plan to leave an hour early in the morning to make it. And that's costing time and money, too.
We have a very full agenda tonight. I'm going to... Somebody wish to speak? Please be brief.
I promise to be brief. John Krajewski, I live at 1699 Whitmore Street in Sebastian. I drive that road every day, and I agree that the traffic is a problem there, but I also believe that if you have a land use regulation and a developer, no matter who that developer is, meets that regulation, you have an obligation to approve it. I'd be the first one to admit that the traffic's bad, but I would be the last one to vote against something if he met the regulation. Thank you.
You're welcome. George, you want to...
Well, let me just jump in a little bit. I'm not going to oppose this project, but it's not that clear. The land regulations talk about traffic analysis and traffic studies and mitigating traffic problems. And the problem is the staff is accepting these applications and then not moving to come to solution on them. And it may be unfair to the developers, but it's unfair to the public that use those roads. And it's not a matter of trusting the staff. It's not a matter of not knowing the rules. The rules are clear. You're supposed to identify traffic problems and resolve them. And we're told there's no resolution here. Maybe in 2 or 3 years they'll start construction. This has gone too far. This shouldn't have come to us. It should have been stopped way back if the county staff wasn't prepared to come up with an answer to the road solution.
Could I address that briefly? Concurrency, as it's set out in the Growth Management Act, says that the facilities will be in place when the impacts occur. Now, the state, in implementing that, says the facilities are considered to be in place if they're scheduled to be under construction within 3 years of the first occupancy of the development. We, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, said we want to be more stringent than the state. We want to have them under construction in 2 years. That was backed off a few years ago. We're following the state rules now. In a perfect world, the facilities are in place when the impacts occur. But the way concurrency is being implemented in this state, if it's scheduled to be under construction within a certain period of time from when the impacts occur, it is considered concurrent, even though real world, driving out there, you know there's problems.
I agree with you.
Thank you, Will.
Then I have some questions on the landscape buffers.
I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
Did you open?
I believe I did.
I'm sorry, it must be old age, but I can't determine what the landscape buffers are on this. I see the tracks, but I don't see what type of buffer it is.
They're type Bs on the main thoroughfares.
Where do you see
That's
that?
correct. There are type B buffers required along the south and the west boundaries of the site that abut 510 and 66th Avenue. Because the project site is under 10 acres, type B buffers are not required along the north and the east boundaries of the site. If the site were over 10 acres, then type B buffers would also be required along those boundaries.
Okay, my question about the landscape buffers is, some of you may remember the Palms. This is the development in Vero where the back doors face out onto the roads. And now we heard about the Palms for months. And this could wind up being the Palms North because it's the same type of development. So can you tell me, is there going to be something that will be screening the air conditioning units and the back doors. Mr. Biddle, could you address that?
I think Brian can also.
Yeah, I'll just add, there is a 6-foot opaque feature that is required and is provided by the plan. And that opaque feature consists of a berm and a hedge, which, the Palms didn't have anything like that along its 12th Street and
Palms were tight.
Indian River Boulevard. Yeah, and I don't even know if that really included an opaque feature on the Palm site.
Oh, we all know it didn't.
Sure, yeah.
I'll talk to the owner about renaming it too, if you like.
Thank you. Okay, those were my only questions then.
Okay.
Oh, and thank you for the right-of-way, Mr. Chairman.
Also, I just note the landscape plan does show 3-foot opaque features consisting of shrubs around the AC pads, so that's...
Where do you see that? Oh, good. That's okay. I believe you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I want to ask about how many children they think they're going to generate. I know we aren't into this yet, but it's coming. So, do we have any numbers on what we think this development will generate?
I think everybody's looking at everybody else here. So
Good point.
the
Is it going to
answer
be
is
like
no.
single-family homes,
13,
0.26 or something?
I have no clue.
No,
I was
we're-
thinking 18.
I don't think we're up to speed for that yet.
There's 58 units, and I think they're mostly 3-bedroom units, so I'm sure that it's marketed towards that type of family. I don't know as far as numbers.
It is under 2. As you probably heard today, it's 0.268 for single family, and I think multifamily is about 0.18.
If you build an
He's
elementary school
considered,
across the way, you can have a left and right turn, and that'll solve our problem.
Almost have one across the way. I thought this townhouses would be considered single-family. They're considered multifamily?
Actually, that's a good point. The building code considers townhouse units attached single family. Right now, we consider them, from a planning standpoint, we consider them multifamily because they're one structure with several units in them.
Okay, so, but even assuming that it's a .268 or whatever, then that would be about, 18 kids or something? I don't know where I came up with that.
Okay, moving right along. To coin a phrase from Craig.
One classroom.
Let's, do we have a motion here?
Waiting on Donna, see how she feels.
Go
Okay,
ahead, Donna.
I don't like it, but the developer really not is at fault for the traffic problems we have there. I would really like the county to take a look at maybe speeding up something here and adding something that can accommodate left turn lanes. But Will is right, you are right. I recommend that we approve with staff's recommendations.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we have 2 opposed. I would like that information conveyed to the BCC. We're obviously very upset about this, but, we would like
I'd
to
like
see.
a caveat on this somewhere. It's just a protest vote for me. They met all the criteria. It's just that this is generating a dangerous condition for the public to me, and that's my baseline concern is public safety. I just can't vote for something I know is going to cause a problem.
All right, next item on the agenda is the Kashi PD Phase 2. Request for preliminary PD plan plat approval for a portion of Phase 2 Pods A and K of the Kashi PD, Kashi Church Foundation, Inc., owner, MBV Engineering, Inc., agent, located between Roseland Road and the San Sebastian River, west of the Roseland Gardens subdivision. Zoning classification PD, plan development, land use designation Con 3, conservation 3, up to 2.5 units per acre. Overall density, 2.08 units per acre on Pod K, 0.94 units per acre overall project. And this is quasi-judicial, and John McCoy is going to do the
Yes.
presentation.
Thank you, Chairman Bruce. This is an application for preliminary PD approval for pods A and K at the Kashi site, and this is consistent with the overall conceptual plan. The overall conceptual plan was approved several years ago. Phase 1 is under construction. Phase 1 is at the north end. Pods A and K are at the south end, and the site was rezoned to planned development as part of the conceptual plan. This is an aerial that shows the location. The overall site is outlined in red. The pods A and K site is shaded, and it's on the west side of Roseland Road running generally north and south, and the primary portion of development is closest to Roseland Road. This is a slide of the proposed development. They're going to pave the entrance and then bring paved parking back, have 4 units or 4 buildings, and that will essentially house a 41-bed adult care facility and have approximately 24,000 square feet of building area. And this is 10 acres of roughly the overall almost 80-acre site. The next slide deals with traffic circulation, and with this, the applicant is going to be constructing, actually the county will be constructing a left turn lane at the project entrance. The left turn lane is part of a developer's agreement and will be in place in advance of the actual demand. So there will be a
How unusual.
yeah. Actually, the repaving is going on now. It'll be part of the repaving project, and it is in advance of the actual impact. So it'll be in place in advance of the actual impact, the left turn lane. As far as other improvements, there is a required sidewalk along Roseland Road that they'll need to meet, and they'll need to meet the Wabasso corridor plan for architecturals. And they're in the process of doing that. There is a condition that all the buildings be 2-story or less. In this case, all 4 of those buildings are single-story buildings. So they're all single-story in this case. As far as environmental issues, there are quite a bit of environmental areas on the site, both uplands and wetlands. All the wetlands will be conserved, and there'll be an upland conservation easement around those as an upland edge buffer. There are gopher tortoises on the site. The applicant has located those burrows. Their preference is to relocate, and they've got a relocation program with a biologist that they have on board. So they're going to attempt to relocate all that they can find. They do have an incidental take permit in case they're unable to relocate some of those gopher tortoises. As far as drainage goes, the stormwater will be collected in a series of underground pipes, piped to a lake at the south end. The stormwater will be treated and then discharged to a wetland, which will eventually discharge to the Sebastian River, which is further to the west of the site. As far as landscape buffers, this was a condition of the conceptual PD, that along Roseland Road, there would be a type A buffer, which is the county's most intense buffer, and then along the south property line, a type B buffer. And where you see the lighter shading, that will be essentially vegetation that's preserved to meet that. It's fairly dense vegetation. They'll preserve that. Again, there may be some supplemental vegetation to infill where necessary. And then the other areas where it's green majority will be planted, but they'll preserve what they can in those areas. With that, staff does recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission grant preliminary PD approval with the conditions as recommended by staff. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Any questions from up here?
No, this has been moving along. It came up several years ago, and they're following the plan, probably as money arises.
Anybody else?
Now, we've torn this apart for a couple of years, and they're just fulfilling the requirements that we imposed upon them at that time. And probably doing a better job than what we imposed upon them.
I'm going to open this up for public comment, but I think you can see the sense of the board up here, so let's keep this real brief.
Hello, Robert Leon, MBV Engineering, 14th Avenue, Vero Beach. I'm here to answer any questions you have on the project.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public? Good. I'm going to close the public hearing.
I make a motion we approve with staff's recommendations.
Second.
Dick, are you satisfied with the environmental report?
Yeah, they did a good job.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Passes unanimous.
Well done, guys.
Well, you're tough today.
Yeah. Maybe we'll make it. Next, okay, we're coming to public hearings now. Next item up is quasi-judicial, Daisy Hope Center, request for special exception use approval for an addition to a child care facility. Indian River County owner, Schulke, Biddle and Stoddard LLC agent, located at 8435 64th Avenue between County Road 510 and 83rd Street. Zoning classification RS3, residential single family up to 3 units per acre, land use designation L1, low density 1 up to 3 units per acre. And as I said, this is quasi-judicial. And Steve, you're up.
Thank you, Chairman Bruce. Stephen Dirdorf, Indian River County Senior Planner. This is for the Daisy Hope Center, which is an special exception use. A little background, it's located at the former Wambasso Elementary School. The existing Daisy Hope Center facilities are located within the old cafeteria auditorium area. The proposed addition to the center will add 1,920 square feet of additional space. This additional space is needed for the existing after-school programs. As required by code, staff has posted required signs on the site giving notice of this evening's public meeting. Staff contacted surrounding property owners by letter, and a public notice was published in the Press Journal. Staff has not received any responses to either the to the posted sign, the mailings, or the public notice in the Press Journal. This is a location map showing that the proposed addition to the Daisy Hope Center is roughly 650 feet south of County Road 510 on 64th Avenue. Here's an aerial showing the properties to the east, and then if you look closer, you'll see buffers on the south and west side. Those will come up later. The site plan here shows the school, the existing elementary school. This area here is the existing Daisy Hope facilities, and this will be the proposed addition. And in this area here is an existing driveway that will be improved and designed to protect 6 very large oak trees that are in that vicinity. Proposed landscape plan calls for a type C buffer along 64th Avenue, and as shown on the aerial, the existing buffers on the west and south boundaries. In the type C buffer, they will be protecting the 66 existing oak trees. There will be 13 new oak trees, 6 silver buttonwood understory trees, and a viburnum hedge that is required along 64th Avenue. The staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the Board of County Commissioners grant special exception use approval for the addition to the Daisy Hope Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I was out there this afternoon. I didn't see any of the notices. Did anybody else see them?
I was out there, but I didn't notice them.
I didn't notice
I was too impressed with this project.
I don't know whether this is something that...
We have to plead guilty if we didn't look.
Yeah, I didn't think about that part.
This is a great location. This is a great program. This is a great improvement to the property. I just think this is a no-brainer.
We have a public hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
We'll make it short.
Does anybody have any questions up here? Okay, I'm going to open this up for public hearing. Does anybody from the public wish to speak? Again, be brief.
Go to Biddle, Shoki, Biddle, and Stoddard. Anything? Any questions? I actually have one question. Are you referring to the sign out front where?
I didn't see it.
Well, we've had a problem with this. We've had 4 signs we posted on different sites, and they've all been stolen, or the right-of-way department, someone, sheriff's department, someone picks them up. So that might be an issue we have.
All right. Well,
do we need to notify sheriff's department or something?
Chairman Bruce?
Yes.
This sign was posted by county code enforcement officer at the turnaround driveway.
Yeah, I went through that driveway. Okay. I just didn't see it.
Do we have an issue with the sheriff's department or somebody we need to notify?
No, it's just...
Issue with the clock.
Okay, let me do this real quick. Does anybody else from the public wish to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Move
Do I have a
approval as
motion?
presented.
Second.
Good. Okay, I have a motion and a second for approval. Anybody, let's see all the ayes.
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, next item up is also quasi-judicial. And this is a public hearing, Sunup Adult Care Facility, request for special exception use approval for community center use in the existing Sunup Adult Care Building. Sunup of Indian River, Inc. owner, Schulke, Biddle, and Stoddard. Boy, you guys are doing a lot of them tonight. Located at 2455 5th Street Southwest, zoning classification RM6. Residential multifamily up to 6 units per acre, land use designation L2, low density 2 up to 6 units per acre. And Brian.
Thank you, Chairman Bruce. This is a request for special exception use approval for what would be considered a community center. And the subject site is located on the south side of 5th Street Southwest, just a little bit east of 27th Avenue Southwest. And as you can see, it's surrounded by single-family and multifamily residential zoning on all sides. And then you have commercial, what would be limited commercial zoning along 27th Avenue in the vicinity. This is an aerial view of the site, and you can see the existing adult daycare building in the northwest corner of the site, just above the letter S on the map there. And this site is immediately east of the Salvation Army site. And you've got an existing single-family residential subdivision, which is the Preserve at Vero, across 5th Street Southwest from the site. And under construction is the Pineapple K multifamily development. Also, there is an approved multifamily development, which is not yet under construction, called Toscana, that's just south of the site. And just south of that is a multifamily development under construction known as Bradford Place. And one other thing I'll highlight that's adjacent to the site is the future South County High School site, which is the property that is immediately to the east of this site. As you can see, the proposed community center use is actually only going to be within a portion of the overall Sunup property. And essentially that's the property where the existing adult daycare is operated. The remainder of the site for Sunup is actually going to be adult congregate living facility units, or essentially assisted living facility units that'll be in multiple buildings around the east and the south boundaries of the site. But the proposed use that's before you is actually only going to be contained within the portion of the site that is tied to the existing building for the adult daycare. And this is the site plan for that site. And as has already been stated, it's going to use the existing building for the adult daycare. And the purpose of the community center use, which I'll just highlight, is so that Sunup would be able to essentially allow the building to be used for public meetings and public events. So those will be meetings and events that are not necessarily by or for persons who are associated with Sunup or clients of Sunup. And they will be contained within that building. And currently there are 17 existing parking spaces around the building. In order to bring the building up to the parking requirements for a community center use based on the square feet of the building, an additional 30 parking spaces will be needed. And those will be constructed along the existing driveway around the building. And the building will utilize the existing driveway onto 5th Street Southwest, so there's no change with that. And then also the landscape buffers are already in place but will be supplemented along the site's entire boundaries. And then looking at the area around the building, this will be along the north boundary and the west boundary of the site. Community center uses are subject to the special land use criteria in section 971.14(1) of the land development regulations, and the proposed site plan does satisfy these requirements, of which there are essentially three. One has to do with building setbacks, and the proposed building is well beyond the minimum setback for the required use. And in addition, the 5th Street Southwest access has been approved by the Public Works Director, so that second criterion has been addressed. And then there are the Type B perimeter buffers around the project's boundaries. So all three of those have been addressed. And then lastly, I'll just note that as with all special exception uses, this project there was a sign posted on the site, there were mailing notices sent to surrounding property owners, and there was a legal advertisement advertised in the Press Journal. And I have not personally received any phone calls from any of those, although, and my contact information was in all the letters that was sent to the surrounding property owners. Based on this analysis, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that they grant special exception use approval for the proposed community center use.
Bob, can I ask him a question?
Yeah, just one second. Back up to that slide that shows the two areas of the site. Yeah, right there. Now, we're only talking about what's within the yellow tonight, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, but I mean, we're seeing, a lot more stuff here than...
That's already been approved.
This is, okay.
The first page of the exhibit package that you have before you is essentially just to put the context of the building within the overall site. Okay. And then the other pages of that site plan exhibit zoom in on the area under consideration.
When we approved this originally, I thought we went through all of this because the community center and there was some questions about that with some of the surrounding people, and I thought we had gone through this once. So is it in front of us again tonight because of the property shrinking, or am my memory faulty, which is not unusual?
Well,
but it is convenient, so don't ever forget that.
Go ahead,
I think when the Sunup special exception use was approved a few years ago, this building was termed as functioning as a community center for the project, but it's really a different usage of the term.
Because you're going public now, we're expanding. Okay, the expansion of the use. I must have missed that. In my got it. I mean,
all right.
It's because it's.
We have any other questions up here?
We've been down this road already.
Okay, this is a public hearing. I will open the public hearing. Anybody wish to speak? Nobody wishes to speak. I'll close the public hearing.
I'll move approval as presented.
Okay, we have our motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Wasn't this quiet the first time?
Yep, passes unanimously.
This is a good group. This is a good job.
Okay. We have a rezoning up next, Kennedy 2007. Request to change the zoning for plus or minus 11.59 acres located east of U.S. Highway 1 and south of 79th Street from CL, Limited Commercial District, to CG, General Commercial District. Kenneth P. Kennedy, Thomas P. Kennedy owners, Collins, Brown, Caldwell, Barquette, and I can't ever say that, whatever. Okay, and Rachel is going to do this one.
Good evening, thank you. Rachel Klein, Long Range Planner. Tonight, the property that we're looking at is east of US 1 and just south of 79th Street, kind of in the Winter Beach area. It's approximately 12 acres, and the request to rezone from CL Limited Commercial to CG General Commercial. The purpose of the rezoning is to allow for development of the site with commercial uses that are allowed in the CG zoning district and that would be consistent with the land use designation. For the subject property, it is a vacant wooded site. To the north, in the light color, it's pink, is zone commercial light, limited commercial. To the straight north and northeast, residential. To the east is RM, which is also vacant and wooded. To the south, CL vacant, and to the west, the darker red CH is heavy commercial, and then to the north of that, again, limited commercial. The main differences between the two zoning districts, for general commercial, it's generally for retail sales, but not heavy repair services nor industrial uses, whereas the limited commercial is more restricted for convenience retail and service needs. As with all rezonings, the following criteria are analyzed. This particular rezoning request is exempt from the concurrency review. The intensity of commercial use is the same for both CL and CG. At the time of development, a more detailed concurrency review would be required. We did review all of the applicable policies in the comprehensive plan and did find that this request was consistent with the comprehensive plan. For environmental impacts, the impacts are the same for both CG and CL, and no adverse impacts are anticipated. As far as compatibility, to the north, south, and west, CL and CH are compatible with the proposed CG. To the east, the RM6 was multifamily residential. CG is considered, the REM is considered an appropriate transition between the single family to the northeast and the proposed CG. And again, CG is an appropriate zoning along major roadways such as US 1. In conclusion, the requested CG zoning is compatible with the surrounding uses. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It was exempt from the concurrency test, and there are no environmental impacts anticipated. Therefore, staff does support the request and recommends that you recommend to the Board of County Commissioners to approve the request.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Could I ask you, on the question of compatibility with the surrounding properties, your conclusion is that it is compatible. What are the issues there? What are some uses that might raise a question?
I did, in your packet, if you'll look at towards the back, there are CG and CL uses that are listed. A couple of the uses that may be allowed in CG but not in CL would be, for example, rental of cars, fuel dealerships, landscape services. There's only a few that are actually only allowed in the CG that are not also allowed in the CL.
But my question is, are any of those uses raise issues of compatibility? Or is it slam dunk? There's no incompatibility discussion. Is this a judgment issue, or is it just clear black and white?
Yes.
With that in mind, would you discuss the corridor plan as well? Because then we have,
Yeah, we did.
did retail, I've forgotten a lot of it, but when they're retail and some of the had to be enclosed, there's some requirements that go along with the corridor plan.
I don't think this is part of the corridor.
It's not in the corridor? I thought it was down by there.
It's 77th Street North.
Bob, my question is,
Thank you.
are there issues here? Are there some uses that, well, it's your judgment they're compatible, it's an area for exploration or discussion?
I don't really think there are any incompatibilities. And let me just give you a little overview. We have probably about 6 or 7 different commercial districts, and we have a lot of overlap in the districts. And the districts really are a continuum from CH, which is really the heaviest type of commercial district until you get to the industrial. And then going the other way, you go all the way to the pro district, the office commercial residential and the professional office district. And between them we have several other general types of commercial districts like CG, commercial general, CL, commercial limited, neighborhood commercial. But as Rachel said, between the CL and the CG districts, there isn't that much difference. Maybe one of these days we really ought to consider merging them, having just one. It's probably better to have fewer of them. Probably the major differences, like Rachel said, are car dealers, boat dealers, some automobile uses, mostly sales uses. And these are appropriate on a major high-volume, high-speed roadway like this. In terms of compatibility, I don't really think there's much difference between the uses that are allowed in CL and the ones that would be used in CG. And as we note in the staff report, there is multifamily zoning, which is a good transitional use. It's better to have multifamily adjacent to commercial and providing a transition to single-family residential.
That goes to my next question, Bob. You say there's no incompatibilities are anticipated because there's a multifamily use buffer. If that buffer were not there, what would the nature of the incompatibilities be?
Well, you look at it, it's not completely forbidden. It's not. We have a lot of instances in the county where CG does abut single family. So it's not something that's prohibited. They can coexist, and that's why we have landscape buffers and we have requirements like that. Where we can't achieve a transition through different uses, that's where we have, say, physical requirements for buffers.
Well, one last, I'm a little confused. You're saying it's compatible because you've got this buffer, multifamily, yet it also, even if you didn't have the buffer, you're telling me there would be compatibility. I mean, it's sort of, but let me ask you this. Is it known what's going to be done with this property if it's rezoned?
Right. Even if the
I can ask the question,
right.
I think.
And I don't personally know the applicants here, but I wouldn't put any credence in what the applicant tells you, not because of the applicant. I want to make that clear, just because of the fact that things can change. The applicant can sell it next week. He can be out of the picture. The market can change. So I don't know. And Stan can go over some of the corridor issues.
Before you do that, I think the one use that stands out to me is new and used car dealers and the drive-through restaurants. Those are really the two key uses that stand out to me.
Kennels didn't get
What about a kennel?
I didn't see
That in a boarding house,
Sorry, I missed that one.
they've got several in here.
Okay.
On the point of uses, because you are really just looking at the difference, but the compatibility issue would only relate to what are the differences between CL and CG, I think like you just mentioned. In the Wabasso corridor, unlike other corridors, and this is in the Wabasso, the following uses are prohibited, regardless of the zoning. Outdoor display of automobiles, motorized vehicles for sale or rent, outdoor display of mobile homes for sale or rent, outdoor display of boats for sale or rental. So those uses would be allowed in the corridor if they're inside an enclosed building and in the appropriate zoning. But I think the drive-through restaurant window would be one of the few uses that is not prohibited in the corridor.
Well, it's already in the Wabasso corridor, so.
I'm sorry?
Burger King. It's already in the Wabasso.
That's correct, and it's allowed in that zoning district, in the CG zoning district there too.
Any other questions from up here? Okay, this is a public hearing. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Does the applicant wish to speak first?
I'd like to say a couple of things. Doug Vatunak, attorney for the applicant, Collins Brown Caldwell, Barquette and Garavalia.
Okay.
The RM6 zoning district is actually specifically appropriate for a transition between commercial development and single-family home development. So that's what we see here. The uses that are permitted in CG that aren't permitted in CL are those which need to be by roadways, major arterial roadways like this is. And by doing this rezoning, you make the use of the land more efficient. Things like traffic, buffering, setbacks and things like that have requirements that need to be met at site plan further down the road. The applicant, to my knowledge, doesn't know what they plan to do with the property, but it provides flexibility. The board back in January actually gave approval to one Mr. Chestnut, who rezoned his property from CL to CG, much as we request to do today. His property is less than half a mile from us, and there was a discussion by the community development director about how probably most of these properties on US 1 should be zoned CG. There was some discussion about whether or not that should be done in one fell swoop, but there are problems with county-initiated rezonings that could arise. So I think it was left that we'd come back one by one and request these rezonings. The lot's not going to stay vacant forever. A while back, my clients attempted to go as far through a process as they could to rezone it to RM6, which is the same zoning that the neighborhood residents who have come here to speak today, or who I assume will say some words today, currently live under, and that even that was opposed. So we understand that the change is a little unnerving for the residents, but it's appropriate by the comp plan, which we have to follow when we look at rezonings. The landowner is presumptively entitled to the use of their land if it's if we meet the comp plan, and I would suggest that you should recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions for you.
Just one thing, the property that you cited was a little bit different in that it was the same owner adjacent, had the property adjacent to the part that was being rezoned, so it was slightly different.
That's right. That parcel adjacent was a single-family residential.
Correct.
Whereas this is multifamily, which is described in the comprehensive plan as being an appropriate transition.
Help me understand, I'm confused on this. You say your client has no idea what they're going to do with it, but they're asking for this change.
Right.
To...
It provides flexibility for if they want to later develop the property or if they want to sell the property.
Right. And so it provides greater flexibility. And yet the current zoning has tremendous flexibility, a tremendous number of uses. The requested rezoning has a number of uses. They both have a lot of flexibility. What is being gained flexibility-wise here? Can you help me understand that?
Well, I mean, there's a long list in the back here of different uses.
Right.
And
both of them have...
If you had somebody looking to buy a piece of property that was looking for one of these uses that was permitted in one category but not in the other, certainly that would increase the value of the property and provide a better market.
I think when you look at that list, though, I mean, I just was noting some of the differences, and I don't know what you all want to use the property for either, because I tend to agree that the CL is fairly flexible, but I mean, we're talking about like hotels, dry cleaners, a funeral home, auto rentals, there's body shops, auto repair, you've got car wash, new and used car sales, drive-through restaurant, fuel dealers, and freight transport. Of the items I saw, there are many items that, more than that are allowed under CG, but those are some of the ones that I'm not sure I would think were really compatible in that area. Those are the bigger issues. I'm not sure those are real issues that are uses you all are considering, but...
Well, the comprehensive plan states that RM6 is compatible as a transition, okay, between commercial...
CL or CG, either one.
That's right. So that's a non-issue, the way I see it.
Will, if this zoning was to go ahead, can we restrict the zoning by removing uses, or is it up or down?
It's up or down.
Okay.
What was that? Up or down?
Up or down.
Go back. Stan, can you go back through the Wabasso Quarter uses that are disallowed, please?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
The uses that Wabasso Quarter specifically disallows.
Right, and just one thing, body and paint shops are not allowed in CG or CL, only in CH and industrial. The body and paint shops are not allowed in either CG or CL, only in the heavy commercial district.
But automotive repair is.
Yes, it is, that's correct. And in the Wabasso Quarter, in terms of the types of uses we're talking about, prohibited outdoor display of cars or vehicles or boats for sale. So they could have that use inside a building.
What about rental cars? Because I'm thinking enterprise on
They can't be out. They can't be displayed. They cannot.
So they're really kind of either they have to be inside or they're off the table.
Exactly. And about the only places you see those are in downtown areas where they're only inside buildings, so probably would not see those uses.
Does that also apply to automotive and marine repair?
It applies to sales and rental.
Just sales and rental?
Right, that's correct.
Right, but CL does not allow automotive repair and CG does.
That's correct. You can have the quick oil change and some minor type of repair things in CL, but not general automotive. And you're correct, that is allowed in CG.
There were a couple, Donna has a list here, and it's different than the list that was in the backup. I mean, one of the things that I noticed in Donna's list is bottle clubs. That is not in this list that was in the backup. Are we dealing with just two separate lists here, or is there some discrepancy?
Bottle clubs is in attachment 3 at the very bottom of a few pages in.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I do see it now. Yeah, okay. Okay, the public hearing is still open. Does anybody else wish to speak?
Good evening. I'm Glenn Gravengood, Glenn Gravengood, PA, 2801 Ocean Drive. I'm also an elder and trustee of Christ Presbyterian Church, which is the owner of 7 acres directly south. I did deliver a letter yesterday. We just recently received notice. There was an old address, so we never got actual notice concerning this, but of course we're here. We have a few concerns. We are in the...
Can you get closer to the mic?
We are in the permitting process with the construction on this 7 acres. We are very much directly impacted by this. This was part of an exchange that we did with the Kennedys, and we agreed to allow an access easement to that 7 acres. So there is going to be access, vehicle access, across our property.
Where is your property located?
It is directly south. If you do have this, there's a photo.
So it's right there where the mouse is?
Yes, right all the way to 77th Street.
Why is access needed across that?
I believe that they reserved that. We originally understood that they were going to put residential in there. That was the original plan, and I think my colleague referenced that this was going to be residential, and the easement has some plots that talk about residential. There's going to be a light eventually at 77th Street. So if they have, that would allow them back access on a residential subdivision.
Okay.
So I think that is why originally that access easement was granted. But with the church's use, we have young children, we have elderly people, and some of the uses that are included in this are of concern. One that I didn't hear mentioned was distribution center. There's also talk of freight uses. So we could have truck traffic running through here, interfering with our quiet enjoyment with it as a church. Also, again, young people, small children perhaps, older folks. We think that this is incompatible with our use of the property.
Okay. Just 1 second. The zoning on his property is CL? Is that correct? Okay.
That is correct. And we're sort of dealing with the situation where we have this, well, we're not planning to do anything with the property now. And there's no reason for this change that's imminent. I think it makes much more sense to the board to see what the use is going to be and then deal with the zoning. Because we just heard earlier this evening about a lot of uses that you have to allow because...
Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, but we understand your concern.
Right.
It's called spot zoning.
Yeah, we can't...
I don't understand why it doesn't there could be a site plan approval and a rezoning simultaneously submitted to us. Perhaps we can't condition the rezoning in certain ways, but I would think there'd be ways to bring the two things together.
Will, is that correct?
I'm not sure what your question is.
Whether or not a site plan approval and a rezoning can take place concurrently.
They certainly can take place concurrently. I think the question is, does the owner of the property have a intended use at this time to present to you? If he doesn't, he can make application to rezone.
Right.
You have some discretion.
But my point is, we're dealing with a vacuum in a sense. We don't know what this intended use is going to be. In earlier discussions this evening, once that genie is out of the bottle, once you have the change of zoning, you as a board, as a commission, are somewhat tied. You can't limit it. If they meet the requirements that are in the statute, you can't really put that genie back. And I think it would be much wiser to see and for the owner to be in a position to tell us what the use is, whether it truly is going to impact us as a church, the neighbors as a residential neighborhood, before approving this. It just seems to be wisdom.
Well, there's also another point, and that is that if you came in with a site plan for a church there, you would be restricting uses surrounding you. So it goes both ways.
But I believe we do have a plan, and we're in the permitting process.
Okay, if that's the case, then you've got the trump card.
Can I respond?
Sure.
Let me ask a question before you do, please. Sure. If the site plan were to come before us and they were to indicate what they intended, and then the change goes to CG, what would keep them from being able to change any of those things on their original site plan to anything that's entertained by CG in the future?
Nothing.
Nothing. That's right. The only process where you have a rezoning and essentially a binding development plan is a PD, a commercial plan development. But I think as was as the discussion went, since they don't have an idea of what they want, they're not in with a development plan. And one other point, just, and I know it's a little bit confusing in the category description, production and distribution services is a category that is permitted in the CG zoning district, but that's not like a distribution center, a warehouse, or trucking terminal. Those are different categories, and they're not allowed in CG. This is dealing with motion pictures and similar type of media production and distribution, not a trucking terminal or warehouse.
Could you briefly just tell me what the permitted use and administrative permit use and the special exemption use is? Can you do it briefly?
Sure, I'll do it real briefly. Actually, we have those three categories of uses. A permitted use is a use by right. If a use is indicated in a zoning district with a P, that's a use by right. The applicant can come in and do a site plan, and if he meets all the requirements, the Planning and Zoning Commission or staff, if it's a staff level approval, is required to approve the site plan and allow the use. Now, both administrative permit and special exception, those are both types of conditional uses, which means, and they're really different by degree. Administrative permit uses are uses that generally would be okay and compatible and appropriate in a zoning district as long as they're regulated to a certain extent. Special exception use is similar but different in a way. That's a use that wouldn't normally be appropriate in a zoning district, but can if it's pretty specifically regulated. Both administrative permit and special exception uses, where they're identified, we have specific criteria relating to those specific uses in Chapter 971 of the LDRs, which is the regulations for specific uses. Like Actually, miniature golf courses is a special exception use. So if you go back to Chapter 971, you can see the specific requirements we have for miniature golf courses. And those are safeguards and requirements that would make a miniature golf course an appropriate use in that zoning district.
Would that come before us?
Yes, both administrative permit and special exception uses come before the Planning and Zoning Commission. And actually, the special exception uses are public hearing types of uses. Administrative permit are not public hearing, but they are at a public meeting.
Doug?
Well, Mr. Smith kind of stole my thunder. That's what I was going to say. We're not required, certainly, to propose a use with a rezoning. Furthermore, the idea that the easement to the church, reserved from the church's property, was only for residential units is not the case, actually. I have the grant of the easement here, and it clearly states that, and I'll read a little bit of it to you here because I don't have a copy. The parties agree that the retained easement will not be the primary public access to our property. It will be subject to the regulations or permits issued by Indian River County, Florida, or other governmental agency having jurisdiction for either commercial development or 70 residential units.
What does primary mean in that context?
First, the main access.
Okay, but I mean, it could be open to interpretation, I guess.
Again, this is a site plan issue. Perhaps the site plan process would eliminate all traffic through there whatsoever. I'm not sure at this stage.
Okay.
Without being too facetious, Stan. So in this case with CG, a kennel could move in there as long as George Christopher, there was mitigation, no barking on Sunday.
I'm not so sure of that. Is that true?
But that could come before us just the same as Top Hat. Isn't that correct? And that's my point, Bob.
It's administrative.
I'm not so sure of that.
It's an administrative permit would be required for a kennel, and I've seen firsthand how easy those are to achieve.
Just so it doesn't have anything to the roosters.
They're not chickens.
All right, do we?
If I could add just
Sure.
A couple more things. That the easement he read from states that commercial and residential that is allowed by the applicable zoning ordinances. Well, that is changing our easement, and that's the whole point. And I know, we made light of the fact of barking on Sunday. I appreciate a good joke, but think about a Burger King or another McDonald's that has a drive-through.
Okay, we've already said that can't happen.
I thought there was discussion that it
Oh, I'm sorry. I misspoke on that.
So we have side by side a Wendy's, a Burger King, whatever else, and people running through there during our use. I think that's a huge impact on us, and the safety, the maintenance, all those kind of concerns. I hope you did receive a copy of my letter.
Yes, we did.
And had a chance to
Actually,
review
the thing that I would be most concerned about is a car dealership there. It could be an antique car dealership or something.
Well,
but
a Harley
you have
dealership would be kind of cool, but it'd be a little disruptive.
It's already been said that it couldn't have stuff outside.
You don't need a Harley to be outside.
Right. Okay, Doug, did you want to speak some more?
He says the zoning's going to change, but that won't change the permissibility of having an easement.
No, I think what he said was if the zoning changes, their easement changes with the zoning. I think that's what he was trying to imply, which is, as I heard it, I think is probably true.
Well, if there is I'm not trying to imply anything. If the zoning changes, their use changes, our
Right.
easement talks about the applicable zoning.
Correct.
And the zoning that's in place now was what was envisioned when that easement.
I think we got that. Does anybody else wish to speak? Okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Lambert. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association Hobart Landing. I just want to kind of do an overview.
Please, why don't you tell us where Hobart is in respect to the
Do
property?
you have a bigger picture of the that parcel in question? I do if you don't.
Why, you want to put that on the Elmo?
Could I put that up there?
What's his name? John Lambert.
John.
Lambert, this is
It probably is. Is this your letter here? John?
No, that's the adjoining subdivision to ours. It's actually facing the wrong way. If you can kind of face it north, 180 degrees. That's better. Thank you.
Okay, please identify where your property is.
Hobart Landing is approximately 50 lots, which includes the majority of 79th Street, Lucia, Marcia, and Martha Lanes, which you can't really see on that picture because those are actually canals, the white areas in between those lanes on the waterfront.
So you're to the north of the houses in the picture?
No, those are our houses.
Mr. Lambert, could you take that podium and point with the pen?
Sure, I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
Hobart Landing is approximately from this point eastward, well, moving the picture at the same time, this point eastward through here. It's approximately 50 homes, and I don't think Rich Hall is here tonight. He's the developer who represents Heritage Trace, which he also gave me a letter, which I think he gave the commission members a letter as well, that I can represent him.
Is that Heritage Trace to the south of?
Heritage Trace goes approximately from here westward.
Okay, what is the property to the south of your property on the river there?
This area, sir?
Yes.
That's
the
wetlands, mangrove. It's
above that. Is that all your?
Well, actually, this area right here where my pen lies is a parcel that was bought by Lucia Bravo, who resides in this home here. She's one of the, fortunately for the homeowners of Hobart Landing, is one of the heirs to Hobart Landing, or Hobart Brothers. She bought this parcel to the north of 15 acres and donated it to the Nature Conservancy to remain as conservation land. In turn, it's been donated to St. John's Water Management to never be built on.
I think the confusion, we see a lot of homes there. Are those, is your association?
This is Hobart Landing here, up to this point, Heritage Trace forward.
Okay, now we understand.
There's 60-odd residential homes in that area.
Where is the subject property we're now talking about?
This area right here. Actually, Hobart Landing owns this small parcel here. It's a half acre. They own this parcel here, and from this point back is all Hobart Landing. But the subject property is right in this area.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
Right in here. There's been much discussion about the surrounding properties and the nice transition from proposed commercial general to RM6. And I think people may have done their homework, but they did it on paper. They didn't do what was actually there. The RM6 that lies in Heritage Trace, which is in this area, is RM6, but it was built as a subdivision of single-family homes. This parcel to the east, this area here, is 15 acres that was, again, bought by Lucia Bravo, donated to the Nature Conservancy, and was given to St. John's in return to never be built on. That's 15 acres of conservation land to the west. On paper, it's RM6. It will never be built on. This parcel here that Hobart Landing owns is zoned RM6. It's so small you can barely get a house on it, so it would be single family if you could get one on there. This parcel in the front is the sign lot for Hobart Landing. Where the sign to Hobart Landing is, it's zoned commercial limited, but that is a half acre that will never be built on. It's in our deed that we will never build on it. So the surrounding properties are purported as being RM6, which indeed they're single-family homes. The property to the direct east is 15 acres of conservation land owned by the St. Johns River Water Management. To the north, they note there's RM6, which is single-family.
Stop you just one second. This St. John's property has not been rezoned con?
Commercial?
And the other properties? The other property to the north of Hobart has not been rezoned either? That's Nature Conservancy?
I have both tax ID parcel numbers here. It's considered state-owned Murphy lands.
Right, I don't know what it is. Yeah, we have.
That's part of the problem. On paper, it looks good, but when you actually look at the property, it's not. Other surrounding property to the south, as the gentleman from the Presbyterian Church mentioned, that's currently commercial limited, which all the surrounding property and the property that would like to be rezoned is commercial limited. Presbyterian Church is an excellent, under the current zoning and designation of commercial limited, a church is a great thing to have in a residential area that has no RM6 in the local area, but residential properties. Secondly, we have some environmental concerns. Approximately where our sign lot is, there's a ditch which goes northward, connects to another deep ditch that goes directly down 79th Street or behind these houses to the south of these houses, and it dumps directly into the second canal. That second canal is a winter home for hundreds of manatees. There's nesting birds, ospreys. It's a pretty environmentally sensitive area. And all that drainage from 79th Street and the property in question drains into that ditch. I don't think car lots, gas stations, kennels, restaurants, hotels, or other CG uses are appropriate to have wastewater, or even rain water to flow into the river.
I think we've already said that car lots are not going to be there because of the Wabasso corridor restrictions.
But the big P in commercial general, as the gentleman suggested, Mr. Collins, is it? Gives you the permitted use right off the bat.
No, it's further restricted by the corridor.
Well, the Wabasso corridor, section 91118 says you can't have outdoor display, but you can have used car lots if they're not outdoors.
Only if they're in a building. I don't think you see too many used cars.
But again, that's permitted.
It is permitted.
Yeah, it is permitted.
It's probably not practical.
No. As Ms. Klein suggested to her right up to the board here, the commercial limited is intended to accommodate the convenience of area residents for retail service and their needs. I think it's an appropriate zoning for our area, not commercial general. The Wabasso corridor regulations 91118 in your River County Code of Ordinances have a number of things that are not permitted, including the outdoor display of automobiles, boats, things that really aren't appropriate, as you know. I think overall that transition to a commercial limited to a residential is what you have, and actually it's mostly residential and mostly conservation area is more appropriate than a transition from commercial general to conservation. I think we should keep it commercial limited. It's more compatible and homogeneous with the area that's in right now. I don't think the permitted uses under commercial general are appropriate, and I don't think people did their homework on this one.
Thank you for your comments, John. Stan, or maybe Bob, if Stan's not feeling so well. We've got two limiting factors on this property. One is how far along is the church? Is it far along enough to restrict uses on the property?
Are you talking about, say, alcoholic beverage sales, no, it would have to actually be in place to restrict it. And then we have a 1,000-foot separation from door to door between a place of worship and on-site consumption of alcoholic beverage. Yeah.
Is there any other restrictions between churches and any other uses?
I can't think of any.
Okay.
If, on this property, as I remember on zoning changes, if the applicant proceeds and the zoning fails, it's a 12-month wait before it could be reapplied, is that correct?
Yeah, 12 months from the time the application was submitted, yeah.
If, we've allowed in the past too, if depending upon the way the discussions were going, if the applicant wanted to remove the zoning change tonight, could he do that? And then come back, I mean, I'm thinking come back with this site plan overlay that may have to have commercial general, but then it would have something precise all at one time. Now, I understand that if they did that, that commercial general would be in place. If we approve it, and the site plan could disappear, and then the zoning may change. But I mean, if the applicant
wants to come ahead with a site plan to give you a comfort level, he needs to do a PD.
Right.
Well, I understand. I mean, I understand, but my point is that if the applicant fails tonight, it goes 12 months without. Does it move? The appeal would be to the Board of County Commissioners, I assume.
Yes.
I remember. But
yes.
I mean, he has 12 months. But if the applicant moved it and came back, if something happened in the 12-month interim, he would be active. He could come back with a PD or something that maybe would entice everyone to let him have CG and be less concerned.
He could come in with a PD after 12 months, he could come in with a PD rezoning. Anytime he could come in with a site plan for CL uses.
Correct.
Correct.
Doug?
Yes, sir. Certainly, we'd appreciate the recommendation of the commission, but we don't want to wait any further. And even if you decline to recommend, we would still appreciate the ability to go on to the Board of County Commissioners.
Well, you have that
Fair
right.
enough.
Okay, public hearing's still open. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Cheryl Barkwell. I live at 3546 Martha's Lane in Hobart Landing. I also sell real estate, and the one little lot that John was saying we have for sale, one of the big concerns about getting it sold is that it backs up to commercial property, period. Changing that zoning from commercial light to commercial heavy would make it completely impossible, even though there is the drainage ditch.
Okay, let's clarify
going through
something here. It's commercial limited and commercial general.
Commercial general, oh, I thought it was
Commercial
commercial
heavy is a whole nother ballgame.
Somehow, that's why I was so I thought, but
Okay.
commercial general still is a higher, if you're selling the property, commercial general still gets more money than commercial light. So if I owned the property, I would want it zoned commercial general so I could resell it to somebody. And the property just across the street has been purchased, part of its commercial light and all, by the developer of the building that had the guy that died out of the mail thing in Boca Raton. Anthrax. The Anthrax building. He's purchased that property across the street. So there is going to be development there, but we don't want to have warehouses there and freight traffic. So I just wanted to show you that in Hobart Landing, there's a lot of support to keep it commercial limited.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
You've originally started the discussion with us, you did refer to commercial heavy.
Right.
Have you and your neighbors been under the impression that this was going to go to commercial heavy or to commercial general? Okay,
Well,
thank you.
I think maybe I was.
All right, thank you.
Maybe I was, but they weren't.
Thank you for your comments. Yes. Please state your name and address.
Yeah, I'm John Reynolds, Hobart Landing Treasurer Association.
Address, please.
3536 Martha's Lane. I'm missing. I think a lot of issues here, I think. Mr. Lambert brought up the issue where what is zoned and what's built are two different things. It's single-family homes, even on 79th Street. A lot that's being sold, which is for RM6, they're going to sell single-family home lots. So there's not a transition period. But I really think it's one issue of merit, it's more of a global issue of definition between CL and CG. At the end of CL, it clearly states, while minimising the impact of such activities on nearby residential areas. That is a residential area. That's why you get different zonings. So that's why that's been zoned for CL, not for general. And I think, I speak for everyone over our landing, we really oppose this.
Thank you for your
We
comments.
oppose it. And heritage trace.
Okay. Go ahead. Name and address for the record.
Thomas Kennedy, 4310 77th Street, Vero Beach, Florida. My father and I own the site there. Bob, can I get the zoning map back up on the board there?
I believe the
Bob Keating.
Elmo is,
No, he's the planning director.
the Elmo is, you need to switch it off the Elmo.
Where's Stan when we need him?
You mean you don't know how to work that thing?
Shashan is here. Technicians are moving forward.
Shashan is slithering forward.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Across from our site there, you'll see that we abut CH right across. So that is a real more intense use than we will have. Also behind our planning and zoning members here is the future land use map. And you see the dark red line running up and down US 1. It was planned that this would be the heavy commercial zoning along this route. And US 1's been there forever. You can't change that. This zoning is necessary in this area. So we ask that you move this forward to the county commission. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
But land has been there for 50 years, so that's what I'm
US 1's been there for over 100, I think.
2 hours into it.
Hi, Dr. Matthew Zoffer, 3556 Martha's Lane. There are, just to reiterate, one major issue is that...
Could you speak up just a little bit?
Is this better?
We have some people who can't hear very well.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Very good.
Good show.
This issue turns on several points. The first of which is that the area in question abuts the land that was donated to the Nature Conservancy and then the St. John's Water Management. I didn't see the preliminary impacts, environmental impact study, but I don't know if there was a pollution study done as well. I know for a fact that the Nature Conservancy, I called them this week, they had not been notified of this change in the zoning. Basically, I just, this doesn't fit the long-term plan for the, although Mr. Kennedy says look at US 1 in the designated heavy construction area, but what he doesn't say is that on the other side of US 1, there's railroad tracks that make that heavy construction. The second thing is that nobody's talked about the access to this area. There is no access on US 1. The access is going to be on 79th Street, if I can show you on the map.
Okay. Just 1 second.
Okay. As I understand it, the access to this property in question, which I believe is right here where the X is, the access is not on US 1, but the access is going to be, the entrance and the exit are going to be on 79th Street, which is the main thoroughfare for the residential community.
How do you know that?
Yeah, we don't know that.
they're limiting US 1 access.
No site plan.
It can be, very easily be, the
Site plan issues.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
I don't think that, traffic impact studies were done, vehicle density studies, or has anybody looked at the addition of traffic control devices in that area that are necessary?
Those, at least for this action today, those are not necessary because of the impact, their equivalent impacts, but
Okay.
go ahead.
The last point is basically what this issue turns on. Mr. Kennedy and the junior counselor from Brown Caldwell, basically are looking at the issue of US 1. The real issue is what's around US 1, okay, and the other surrounding areas. And that involves a protected lands and single-family homes. This is really, if you look at the bigger picture, you have to include what's off US 1 that's been developed as well, or that has been protected so that it'll never be developed. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your comments. Let's take a 5-10 minute break here. I think we're probably
Can I
going
ask
to
Bob, real quick, a quick question,
Sure.
and then we can, if you don't
Sure,
mind.
go
This
ahead.
thing on conservation lands is a little bit of a surprise, so I don't understand. I am surprised the county does not know that, or did the applicant know that?
Did the Nature Conservancy get notice?
There's 30 acres. St. John's owns it.
Wait a minute.
It was done.
Yeah, well, we know it's St. John's, and I can tell you,
please.
I can tell you, it's often better to have commercial development adjacent to a conservation area than residential. With residential, you don't have cats and dogs and other animals going into the conservation area. You don't have people going in there. Generally, it's not necessarily better, and it's often worse to have residential adjacent to conservation. I can just tell you that.
Okay, let's go ahead and have this break. We'll be back in about 5 or 10 minutes. please, I think we've kind of got enough information on the table right now. If you have any more new information, please let us know. We have a very, very long agenda tonight, and we'd like to move on. Okay, go ahead.
My name is Liz Mason. I'm at 4235 79th Street, which is Hobart Landing, and I am the very first lot there in the RS6 designation. The south west corner of my property is probably about 100 feet from the northeast corner of this particular property. And there is a big concern about everybody in that area regarding the access of that property to US 1. We had talked previously to the church prior to their site plan development, but they did come to our homeowners meeting, as good neighbors do, talk to us about what they plan to do there, and what they had to do when they traded that property, or whatever it is, how they came in to that property with the Kennedy. But the bottom line is, sometimes you just don't know. And the CL designation.
Just one second.
Fine.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I hit the button. I think that was like the.
That was my
Let
thing.
me clarify one thing here real quick, Stan or Bob. What's going to be the access with this property on 79th, please? sir?
Access will be off US 1. We don't want to mix residential and commercial traffic.
Okay, so you have an answer on that.
Do you decide that, or does someone else decide that? Like,
I
does
think-
the
I
DOT, does the DOT get involved in that? I mean, can they say yes or no?
DOT has to permit it, but a parcel has a right to get access to a state road.
I think
That's
very
it.
quickly, good or bad, CL or CG, your access problem is, or issue is the same. So the only difference in the CG right now is there are a few more uses that they could use this property for. It will not change your access, ultimate access one way or the other. I mean, you're at risk either way. Okay.
But I don't see
So I
at
don't
this
think
time
if that's an issue, I think you're going to have it either
Dice are
way.
rolling on that.
I don't see at this time why that's absolutely necessary. There is very little difference between the two designations.
Well, I think some of your
Not
neighbors.
if you read this. Not if
Okay.
you read this. It's not.
All right. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My name is Robert Legler, and I live at 946 Painted Bunting Lane in Vero. And I am the chairman of the building committee on the church property. And I thought I would mention that we did file our site plan. We're in the process of that right now. And the turn-in to our property off of US 1 is at the northernmost edge of our property. And our consulting engineers advised us that we needed to give the Kennedy property access because there would not be able to be another turnoff from US 1 into their property, which would validate whatever the other gentleman mentioned here, that it would be 79th, I guess you said, would be the other access into their property.
Well,
and we would be happy if the county would say that there would be another access off of US 1, rather than have them have 2 points of access through our property.
I'd like to ask staff that question. There is a requirement that there be a certain distance from an intersection or from another driveway. If they put their driveway at the north end of their property, would that preclude the northern property from being able to have access on US 1?
It's been a few months, I think, since the church site plan was at TRC. And I think the access comments are yet to be addressed. Typically what you'd see there is actually DOT would require a shared driveway between the two uses, and they would use it. So that may be what actually results. You raise a good question, and I'm not sure the frontage on US 1 here. I think it's several hundred feet. But you're correct, there are separation distances that they'd have to observe, but they may wind up sharing an access.
I guess my point was, for better or for worse, Bob, you have the same exposure with a few more items possibly on the property currently with the commercial limited that you've got with commercial general. You have that same problem or exposure or whatever because it's already CL. So I think you're going to have that problem anyway.
Okay, well, I just was clarifying the other gentleman's point about access to the property is going to be through
The
our...
norm would be shared access, and I'm not sure where. I think you've got valid points, but those are site plan issues, as Doug said earlier. That comes up later. But
okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Ken Kennedy, one of the owners of the property, 4310 77th Street, Vero. Just a couple things I'd like to point out. Number one is that this site is very similar to one that you rezoned to CG a number of months ago. One difference that you pointed out, I believe, was that it was the same owner that owned the single family behind it. Obviously, that owner can sell that single family at any point in time, and they can develop that into single family. In this case, behind ours, between ours and the Hobart development, we have 15 acres of land that is in the public domain. It's owned by the public, St. John's. That's the best buffer there is. It doesn't get any better. Nothing will be built there. And you've got 15 acres between us and their single-family houses on RM6 property. Number one.
Yeah. All right. Okay, that's enough.
Number two, other than that, we are totally surrounded by commercial. Either CL to the south, CH across the street, or another CL across the street. Furthermore, if it was brought up about the pollution and pollutants running down the ditch, well, most of those pollutants, if they are running down the ditch, are probably coming off of US 1. That's probably a DOT ditch, number one. Number two, if we were to develop the site into something CG, obviously, we have to hold all of our water on site. Mm-hmm. That would totally cut down and cut out any pollution that was leaving the site now as it sets.
But you would have to do that under CL too.
That's correct. And one other item, we did contact the gentleman who's the head of the homeowners association, my son did, and offer to meet with him and or anybody else from the homeowners association that would like to within the past 2 weeks. And the gentleman did not even bother to return my son's call. So we ask that you go forward and approve this ask the county commission to approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
John Lambert again, the president of Hobart Landing Homeowners Association. I know you're pressed for time, but this is my home we're talking about down the street. This is my neighbor's
Anything
home.
that you have that is new to this discussion, please.
Yeah, I'm not going to go over old stuff. Can I get the overhead here just for a second? I don't know how to get this again. All right, thank you. He said there's a preserved buffer. Well, this is a single-family home lot here. There's Heritage Trace, which is here, and there's RM6, which is here. So his property is directly across the street. His proposed commercial general is right across the street from residential houses, just separated by a DOT ditch. Okay. Someone in the audience mentioned that it was owned by it wasn't conservation land, but these are the copies of the two sales off the tax assessor's map for both their Nature Conservancy. This is the one to the east, which is 15.71 acres, which is the Nature Conservancy, as you can see. To the north of Hobart Landing, there's another 15.02 acres, which is the Nature Conservancy. And my biggest gripe here is the zoning in this area. There's one commercial heavy, which is right across the street from the railroad tracks. In this general area, everything around the subject property is commercial limited. And I don't see why the commission would want to have spotty areas of commercial general and commercial limited. And it keeps being mentioned that the property that Ken Chestnut, his half acre, as opposed to 15 or 12 acres, I believe we're talking about here, his half acre was zoned to commercial general. Okay, his is south of 77th Street. 77th Street, section 91118, the Wabasso corridor, has different zoning, that whole area, to 510. That starts at 77th Street. That parcel in question that was zoned in the last 2 months to commercial general is south of the Wabasso corridor. So I think we need to keep things homogeneous. Everything else around there is commercial limited. You have a community that's been there for over 50 years. It's surrounded by preserves on both sides. It's really not appropriate to put something that's commercial limited in that area, or commercial general in that area. Commercial limited is more appropriate. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Discussion. Oh, I'm sorry.
Real quick, just want to remind everybody, staff finds this meets the comprehensive plan. Staff finds this is consistent with the surrounding uses. There's no what we call competent substantial evidence that we've heard from experts or otherwise that contradict that, and we enjoy your recommendation. Thanks.
I have a motion.
Excuse me, please interrupt. I hate to interrupt. There's a lot of stuff that contradicts it. I mean, his last statement's incorrect. There's a lot of stuff that contradicts it.
Thank you for your comments.
I'll move to deny. I guess two reasons. One, the limited commercial seems more appropriate for residential area. That's on one side of it. On the other side, the general commercial, we've got to assume the worst. We don't have usages, some usages that seem to be very troublesome. So because of that, I would move to deny.
I'll second that, and for once you and I agree completely. George?
Maybe I'll change my motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion?
One item for discussion. This gentleman, the English gentleman, he pointed out that under commercial limited, and this is what made my decision for me, it says, the CL district is intended to accommodate the convenience, retail, and servicing needs of area residents while minimizing the impact of such activities on any nearby residential areas. And that wording is not in commercial general, so I have to go with you too.
For the same reason, I feel the same. Anybody else?
Sorry.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? One opposed.
You have to state your reason.
Greg.
You have to state your reason.
I think that
He meets the
Is your
criteria.
mic on?
Short.
short.
Short statement.
It meets the land use with the comprehensive plan, and it has been approved by staff, and that's my reasoning for opposing the negative vote.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda. Treasure Coast Community Health requests to change the zoning for plus or minus 1.43 acres located south of 9th Street Southwest and approximately 850 feet west of 12th Avenue Southwest from commercial heavy commercial district to CG, going the other way. General Commercial District, Treasure Coast Community Health owner and agent. And I believe, Rachel, you're up for this one too.
Thank you. This location is on 9th Street Southwest, Oslo Road, and about 150 feet west of 12th Avenue Southwest. It's about an acre and a half, and as you said, we're going from CH Heavy Commercial to CG General Commercial.
The other way.
The purpose of this particular rezoning request is to develop the site with a community health clinic, and that is an allowed use under the CG zoning district. The existing property is zoned CH and is vacant. To the north, across the street, is also CH and vacant. To the east is RMH and CH, both of which are vacant, and then to the west, another CH, which is a contractor's business. Again, the
back
zone.
to that,
Oh, sorry.
please. What was that last, you
To
said
the-
a home practice?
Contractor's business.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Al.
I was hearing wrong.
The zoning district differences, we've just covered these, general commercial and heavy commercial, the difference being general commercial, as we know, is for retail sales and selected services, not heavy repair services, whereas CH is more for major repair services and restricted light manufacturing. As with all rezonings, we do analyze the following criteria. In this particular rezoning case, we did have to look at concurrency for traffic to determine the most intense use. CH is considered less intense with traffic, whereas CG is more intense. However, the traffic analysis was approved by traffic engineering that it would not have a negative impact on the area. And the other items that were looked at were sufficient for concurrency. And of course, at the time of site plan, a more detailed concurrency review would be required. Staff did review all applicable policies and found that the request for the rezoning was consistent with the comprehensive plan. Again, the environmental impacts, none are anticipated. CH and CG are the same. Compatibility to the north, south, and west, CG is compatible with CH. To the east, the CG would actually be more compatible to the neighboring RM6 than the existing CH. And again, CG is appropriate for properties that are along a major road. In conclusion, we did find that the request was compatible with surrounding uses, consistent with the comprehensive plan. It did meet its concurrency test, and there are no additional environmental impacts. Therefore, staff does recommend the request and ask that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the BCC rezone the property from CH to CG.
Thank you, Rachel. Any questions from up here?
I just have one. I tried to find this location, but between construction and traffic and everything, I had some problems. What is the property use immediately to the west?
I believe the name of it is Indian River Contractors Corporation. It's right across the street.
It's an office? Contractor's office?
They have a building plus service in the back. I couldn't really see myself either from the
They
landscaping
have
and the
truck
construction.
services, they have stuff in the back.
Okay. I worry actually about this being compatible with a heavy commercial use.
I don't know if you can see on the aerial. It's difficult to see.
You've got both up and down this road, if that's what's worrying.
Okay, because all I could see, I really couldn't find it. So, thank you. Sorry.
Any other questions from up here? It's a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Anybody want to speak? Seeing none, close the public hearing.
I move to adopt as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we have commissioners' matters, and George has...
I have one quick item. Stan, and I talked about this briefly, when we had an issue with the sand mine not long ago, and if you all remember, I imposed several restrictions on the sand mine, and I think that I've been through several of these sand mines, and the same restrictions in many cases have been proposed on several other sand mines. I think that under the LDRs, because Greg is right, we tend to want to go with we follow our emotions at times, but I think that some of what I have proposed, I would like to see move forward into LDRs, and I think it would save at least some of us some trouble in the future. I think they were not far off, and I just, all I was going to do is, if it's all right with the commission, I'm going to ask Stan to maybe try and codify that for you all, so you get a look at it and then we can move on from there, because I think that we'll save ourselves a lot of time and effort if we do that.
I think that's a good idea.
We've been through that.
It's a very good idea.
Times.
Does anybody else have anything?
That was it.
Okay.
A couple weeks ago, well, actually, a couple weeks ago, I guess, we discussed the intersection of 58th and 60. And I heard you say that the $20 million that we are going to put into the changes at the intersection, not the improvements, the changes at that intersection, $20 million to make some changes at that intersection. You had a consultant do a study for alternative routes, and you said that the consultant said that doing alternative routes would not work, that we should spend the $20 million on these lane changes. And no, Chris did not just come to yourself.
I don't think I said most of this. I am aware the county did have a consultant look at alternative routes there, and I modeled that to determine how traffic would flow, and determined that it wouldn't. I think he determined, I have not seen the study, I'm not familiar with the specifics, but I think the determination is it would not significantly benefit the intersection.
Well, I heard George made a verbal reaction that evening, and it just solidified the fact that I have a problem with putting $20 million into lane changes instead of maybe looking at putting that $20 million into widening 26th Street or making 66th Street go south and try and find
We're
some
doing all of
alternative
those. We are doing all of those.
Can we do that instead of changing the intersection first?
Actually, I can't answer these. Chris needs to answer these, but we are, and he can tell you what effect those are going to have. But right now, we actually have grants, and we have 26th Street, where it's Aviation Boulevard, from US 1 to 43rd. Design's almost done on that. That'll be under construction relatively soon, probably within the next year or so. And we're working right now with a developer on doing it from 43rd to 58th. And right now from 58th to 66, that's kind of up in the air. But 66 south of 60 as a 2-lane road should be under construction within a year. We're also looking at putting in some of the east-west roads west of Kings Highway. I'm not sure the timing. 12th Street, I think, and 8th Street. But yeah, we are trying to get the grid system, get the actual paved roads on the grid system densified, and see what that will do.
We're going to do that before we go and trying to buy this $20 million fix?
You need to talk to Chris about that.
Stan, are you coming to his rescue? No? Oh. Oh, that's okay. I thought you were listening to it.
I brought up 8th Street, too. I mean, I don't know. That seems so simple.
None of...
Huh? Perhaps this is a matter for the next meeting when
Yes, I would like
be
to...
directed to be here.
Can we do that? I just hate to spend $20 million of the county's money.
Put it as an agenda item for next week's meeting under...
Okay.
Out of curiosity, doesn't the MPO deal with some of the ranking filings on this?
Sure do.
But not 8th Street. I don't think 8th Street's on there.
Actually, the MPO usually deals with bigger picture issues and doesn't deal too much with intersections. But we did just get what's called a TRIP grant for the 58th Avenue State Road 60 intersection. So I think we got about $4 million in state funding for that. So we're going ahead, and I think according to the studies...
Wait, what happened to the other $16 million, though?
Yeah, we're getting incremental grants. Things are expensive out there, and I think the studies show that regardless, some improvements are going to need to be done at the intersection, State Road 60, Kings Highway.
But are we talking about making these improvements all the way back to moving that electric station?
I don't think so.
Okay, it's not being
No.
fair to you. I need to wait till
Yeah,
Chris is here.
I don't know.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Bob, I have, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, no.
Well, very quickly, this letter that we received from David Gunner on agriculture and urban water conservation, is that going to be discussed tonight during George, whenever we talk about the programs that we were thinking about for your issues? Is that going to be discussed, this water issue?
Well, I was going to raise another letter I have that raises similar issues. Bob can maybe help us. My assumption is this will at least be part of the evaluation and appraisal process. And is not Olson preparing a report that's going to deal with these issues? Yeah. There may be other.
I shut myself
There may be
up.
other forums as well.
Actually, that's the case. I think I heard last night that another water supply workshop with St. John's has been scheduled, and I think it's the end of June. I think it's June 21st, but I'm not sure.
Correct is also
yes,
this will be part of the evaluation and appraisal process.
Yes, several things are moving forward. It will be part of several elements of the comp plan. The evaluation and appraisal report will be looking at it under the potable water sub-element. We have to, by state law, look at potable water supply, public water supply. We'll be looking at it under the aquifer recharge element, and to some extent in the conservation element. Separately, the utilities department has a consultant right now doing a study on alternative water sources. And actually, that's what we're going to have to depend on for a lot of our detailed information. I hate to break it to you, we're not experts in every single field.
Is this something that, in addition, we should put on a P&Z agenda and have Olson address some of these issues and have some of the people that are concerned respond? That might be a...
Yeah, get David in here.
I would certainly like to see that. I think that, and thank you for this article number 3, seeping seawater. I think that water is just the most critical, absolutely the most critical issue in the state of Florida, and unfortunately a drought has brought it to our attention. But I think it's something that the commission and our commission needs to look at thoroughly so that there's an understanding that we can get to the public about water in this state. Thank you, George.
21st is the workshop. Is scheduled.
Yeah. Bob, do you know what generated Dave to write that letter? What was...
It may have been when Lex and Bob Adair were here several weeks ago, and I think it might have come out of the workshop that we had.
Okay, yeah. I'm sure it did.
Along those lines, Bob, and I know you're spoon-feeding us on this evaluation and appraisal approach, which I commend you.
Thank you.
I have a letter here that's, I'm not entirely sure how I got it, but it's part of the public record, to Olson, dated May 22nd from Dick Baker, which gets into issues related, I think, to the issues that the Adair letter got into. And my reason, as these kind of letters come in, can they be distributed to the P&Z, not crank letters, but...
Is this a crank letter or not?
I don't understand it. No, this is no crank letter. This is a very serious letter. Dr. Baker is...
If someone sends them to Stan or me, we will distribute them.
Well, here's the letter.
We'll distribute those.
It's part of the public record. I mean, it went to Olson, so... but my point is only that as outsiders provide information or raise issues or raise questions, it would help us if we could get copies of those letters. I don't know, Dick, how do you think this should be approached? I know you're worried about it.
I think it's the process is moving forward. And they're expecting, my comments were about a draft report that's been circulated very limitedly. And so I made some comments about it. I think that, I don't know what they're going to do with my comments, but I think the CDM is going to hopefully address some of them, I hope. And I think that they're trying to get it done before this 21st of June workshop. So I was just trying to be helpful. And I happened to ask Mr. Olson for a copy of the draft report, and he kindly gave it to me. So I made some comments.
Maybe the move is to wait till after the workshop on the 21st and then see where what that.
I would hope that a draft of the report would come out before that, so that we would have some knowledge of it. But I don't know what the protocol is and what they're going to handle with it.
I think it's at 1 or 1:30.
Anything else, George?
No. I agree. I think we have a serious problem, and I would think Mr. Olson ought to participate, or somebody from water utilities ought to be here at these meetings. I mean, you're doing concurrency on traffic and all these other issues, but I mean, water is quite critical. And one of the options that is in this report is surface water, increasing surface water. That has a huge ramifications, very expensive. Lots of land is involved, and during droughts, it's not really a very effective. We currently, we have more surface water permitted in our county than any other in the St. Johns District.
Wow.
We use, I mean, Fellsmere Farms uses tremendous amount of water, and it's surface water, a lot of it. So we've got major issues, I think. And of course, St. John's doesn't seem to recognize it. They seem to be more concerned with probably even more problems up in Brevard and Orange County and
They've got some
so forth.
huge issues up in Orange County and pumping water all the way down to Dade County even. It's a real...
We only have 135, I guess we'll find out tonight, thousand population, and they have, thousands of people up there, and people south of us are actually on quite restricted use. The Lake Okeechobee is down to 9 feet and
falling.
Well, hopefully, maybe we're getting some rain. It dusted off my windshield on the way down tonight.
I rode the motorcycle, so I'm hoping to get wet on the way home.
Let's hope you get wet.
I brought Ann a rain hat.
Streaming right along the speed of dark.
I have one issue real quick. I've been approached by numerous people from the Summer Place area regarding that resurfacing that's going on north of County Road 510, and basically the theme is, if it ain't broke, why fix it? They feel that the traffic flow in that area is quite okay, and the densities are fairly low. Is this a combination Indian River County and DOT project?
I wish you'd bring up these questions when Chris or Jim was here. But I think this is the project. I think it's a county project. We're putting in turn lanes.
Right.
I don't think it was DOT, and I think it has. I know we got actually Will might know. I think we got a 120 challenge on this one. The turn lane on
we got some emails. I don't know that we've got any 120 challenges. I think there was some discussion with FDOT, and we're so close to finishing it that my understanding was they said finish it up.
Aren't you doing drainage on that too?
Usually we do some drainage improvements.
It's just kind of interesting that we're so bad in some areas of the county, and you have an area there where the residents are saying, hey, there's not a problem here. Why are you doing this work? And it's just kind of a weird one.
It's the way we keep everybody upset.
Yep.
And we do a good job at it.
I'm just glad to see you guys are coming north of 510. Thank y'all.
Okay, anybody else? Nobody wants to harangue? Okay.
I just had one comment on the case that we had at 66 and 510. I really do think it would be better not to have that right-hand lane going north. That, I mean, you probably want to have...
You'll eventually want it, that's the problem. You're right, when you go to turn, you have to think, well, is that guy turning? If he doesn't, you have to think about two potentials. Anytime you cross US 1 and there's a turn, I mean, it's the same thing.
Just feel sorry for the people trying to get out of that development.
The reality is eventually you'll want it, just like you'll, when they improve it, you'll get the left turn lane eventually, probably.
I think Donna's
Keep
got
the flow moving.
Donna's got the key point there.
The people getting out of that development are going to have a real problem.
Yeah.
It's going to be bad.
But I think Greg brought up the safety issue there, and I think it would be better not to have it for a safety reason.
That's the baseline of what we hear, safety, welfare of the public. That's your real baseline.
Well,
Okay, we have planning matters.
Next victim?
You want to, I think there's the, okay, review. Okay, go ahead, Bill.
To review.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. This is the first of several draft evaluation and appraisal report comp plan elements that you'll be reviewing over the next few months. And just because we haven't formally brought too much before you about the EAR, nothing recently, we're going to just touch upon the purpose of the EAR and the brief process. Under Section 163.3191 of Florida statutes, it states that local planning should be a continuous and ongoing process. Each local government in the state must periodically assess the success and failure of its comprehensive plan, address changing conditions, and identify changes in state policy and planning and growth management. For Indian River County, the evaluation report is due to the state on December 1st, 2008. So we've got some time between now and then to walk you through a lot of the elements in the overall EAR and send it on to the Board of County Commissioners for adoption. The EAR-based amendments, the recommendations, analysis, and so forth that comes out of that's got to be adopted and folded into the comprehensive plan with amendments in 2009. The last time something formally was brought before you was a public participation plan. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of that plan, and the BCC approved it back in June 2006. The general evaluation appraisal report steps. The Planning and Zoning Commission is the local planning agency. You provide the general review and direction. Staff conducts the research, analysis, provides reports and draft documents. Advisory groups work with staff. So all your various, like for potable water, for instance, your utilities advisory committee. They review staff reports, review draft EAR comp plan amendments, obtain public input, and make recommendations to staff. And regarding the comp plan elements, of course you realize there's 11 comprehensive plan elements in the comp plan, and then there's 5 sub-elements, and here they are on this page. And tonight we're just looking at the introductory element and the data analysis associated with the intergovernmental coordination element. And then continuing on with the steps, staff prepares final reports for the evaluation and appraisal report. The Planning and Zoning Commission works with staff and reviews the final draft report for evaluation and appraisal, and holds public meetings and necessary public hearings, and recommends to the Board of County Commissioner. The BCC, of course, would be the adopting body. And focusing on the introductory element, I just want to point out the purpose of the introductory element is a little different than a lot of the other elements. A lot of the other elements have the goals, objectives, and policies in here. This is more just the foundation of some of the demographic data, and it's used, again, as a base in updating other comp plan elements. Some of the highlights, and we're taking a snapshot of the county back when the master plan was adopted, and comparing that just to the time now and some of the statistics. And overall population increased by 34.9%, which is 5% faster than the state. 6,000 more residents were in the county in 2005 than originally projected. And that is, I know we've hit upon before this commission, projections. It's always a guess in a certain respect. Average age increased from 44 to 47.9, so almost 48 years old. Population over 45 years old increased from 48.9% to 54.1%. And employment, annual unemployment was lowered from 9.8% to 4.2%. Number of jobs increased by about a little over 18,000. And as a lot of us know, a lot of those jobs are associated with retail jobs out by the Indian River Mall. All that development occurred. And more recently, a lot of construction jobs associated with the recent housing boom.
When was this snapshot in time taken?
The 2 points, well, we're looking at around 1998. A lot of the data for the 1998 plan was from 1995, 1996. And now we're looking at 2005, 2006.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to switch gears, this is more Sasan's element here. Did you want to just jump in at this point? Okay.
Good evening. Sasan Rohani, Chief of Long-Range Planning. Again, like Bill mentioned, there is 15 element and sub-element in the comprehensive plan. And we're going to bring these elements to you, and we know that you're all busy. We try to bring it to your regular meeting. But please, whenever you find out in future there's too many, if you want a separate workshop, let us know, and we would arrange for the workshop. Right now, there are different group and advisory committee that you're looking at different element. But eventually, all of these things has to come through you, and then from here would be passed through the Board of the County Commissioner. Therefore, again, at one point in the future, if you need a workshop, please let us know.
And Bob, is there a schedule available when these other groups are listening? So if we want to insert ourselves early just to hear,
yes,
we can do that.
There is a schedule available. We could actually send a copy to you for your next meeting, but also all of these things are in the county website. A schedule of all the meetings related to evaluation advisory report, they're in the county website, but for the next meeting, we could actually send you a paper copy of it.
Why don't you just send it by email? That's probably the best way to do it.
Or we could email it to you, sure, no problem. Just briefly, in 1990 we prepared our comp plan. In 1998 we prepared the evaluation appraiser report. Like Bill said, for all of these elements, when we were preparing our 1998 evaluation appraiser report, most of the data was 95, 96 data. And then we are looking at the data, present data, which are 2005 and 2006. Basically, we are comparing 10 years period and what happened. As far as the intergovernmental coordination element is concerned, not much change. But again, there's a couple of tables here that hopefully you look at them and you see that there are 56 entities, local government, regional agencies, or state government, that we have to coordinate with them on a regular basis. And some of the things that, when you have so many agencies to coordinate is communication. Again, you need to find out what they are telling you, they need to find out what we are telling them, and sometimes there is a duplication, sometimes the information doesn't come down from the state agency to us, as quick as we want to. Of course, with the website and computer, this thing is getting better. We're getting more information in a timely manner. But overall, to, again, coordinate with all of these agencies are difficult. But however, in this evaluation appraiser report, I have provided several tables for you that you could see for each element of the comp plan, what are the other entities or jurisdictions that we have to coordinate with them, the nature of the coordination, and what are we coordinating for. Those would help us to understand our coordination.
Government at its finest.
One of the other area of the intergovernmental coordination is extra jurisdictional impact. Again, whatever we do here would impact the municipalities. When the municipalities, they do something, impact us and so forth. Because none of us, we are in a vacuum. Again, and that's why one of the things that we would like to make sure that, again, we inform each other of what's going on and try to, if there is something that we do that impact, for example, the city of Sebastian, we want them to know ahead of the time that they would tell us, if we are doing something that they don't like it, or if they are okay with it, and so forth, or vice versa. One of the other areas is, as far as the intergovernmental issues, really relate to some of the annexation. I'm sure that you all heard and, read in a newspaper and so forth. Developers, they come to us and they want to do something, with their, like, say, agricultural land and whatever, that usually we say, no, you can't do it. And then they would turn around and they would annex, the property to the city, and then all of a sudden it's not in our jurisdiction anymore, and many other things could happen. Of course, again, for intergovernmental coordination, we always evaluate if our relationship with all other government is good, bad, or whatever. It sometimes depends what day you are talking about. Some days are good, some days are not good. Therefore, intergovernmental coordination element, by the time that we finalize this thing, maybe some of these things change. These are all in draft format. Maybe, hopefully, at the end, we're going to say all the relationships are good, or some of them are good, some of them are bad. But again, please remember, whatever you have here is a draft, and constantly this thing is changing. And we are coordinating with the other local government. And as a matter of fact, the existing board of the county commissioner, actually they have lots of meetings with the different jurisdictions, different counties, surrounding counties, different municipalities, to make sure that we have a good relationship with the other local government. And in the staff level, usually we have a very good relationship with the other staff from other jurisdictions. And recently, of course, we are working very closely with the school board staff, and we have a very good relationship with them too. Again, if you have any question regarding any of the item in intergovernmental coordination element, I would be happy to discuss it. If either now or future you have any comment, please send us your comment, and we would try to incorporate in these elements.
And Sasan, let me make a few comments here too. I think you understand that this is just the first part of the intergovernmental coordination element. We're going to be back to you several times. What we gave you today was just the data and the analysis part of the intergovernmental coordination element. The next time, and like Sasan said, that is a moving target. It changed last night when the board had a joint meeting with Fellsmere, and we know that just the data and analysis is going to change a lot between now and December of 2008, when we need to adopt the EAR. But let me tell you, this is the least exciting part of all these elements, going through the data and the analysis. What we're going to be coming to you next is looking at the objectives that we have in the plan right now. And I can tell you, we do objectives right. They are measurable, and they have a time orientation exactly for this purpose. Because now what we're going to do, next time we come to you on the intergovernmental coordination element, we're going to come to you with showing each objective and whether we've achieved it or not achieved it, and why we didn't achieve it. Is it still relevant? Do we need to keep it, or do we need to change it? And based on the data and analysis, we may come to you with suggestions for other objectives. And this is the policy planning part of doing plans. This should be the neat part of doing planning. And then, now this is the objectives. Again, this is what we want to achieve. This is where we want to get to. After we deal with the objectives, we're going to come into you the next time, and this is all on the intergovernmental coordination element. We're going to be doing this with every single element, sub-element we've got. After the objectives, we're going to come into you next time with the policies in that, and we're going to look at every policy. Did we implement it? Did we do what we say we're going to do? Because we write policies the correct way. We write them as actions. And we try not to use weasel words. We try not to use encourage or coordinate. If you look through our comp plan, most of our policies are pretty specific. They're action-oriented. And just to tell you, with Bill mentioned we've got 11 elements and five sub-elements. Our plan total has about 200 objectives and about 700 policies in it. This is a substantial undertaking, this evaluation appraisal report. It is really neat, it's really good, it's really beneficial. But when we look at each policy, we're going to determine, like I said, did we meet it? Did we undertake it? Did we do what we said we were going to do? If not, why not? And if we did it make a difference? Did that policy help achieve an objective? And we're going to go through and make recommendations, keep it, dump it, revise it, add new ones. I just want to emphasize to you, tonight should have been your least exciting EAR presentation. I can promise you they're going to get better. And when we start dealing with objectives and policies, hopefully you'll see really what your real mission is as the local planning agency. This is coming up with the blueprint for the county. It's dealing with every one of these specific areas and working, what do we want to achieve? How do we want to achieve it? And that's the basis of planning. That's what we do for a living, and that's what we're helping.
We have a basic rule that if you add a policy, you have to get rid of one. Can we?
Otherwise, we can have policy creep.
Yeah.
But let me just tell you, we're trying to do this. This is a significant undertaking. I probably have 6 or 7 different staff working on this, but all in their spare time, and none of them have spare time.
And this is a copy of our last evaluation appraiser report that we did. As you can see, there's lots of things that going through this evaluation.
Bob, I've got a few comments. And I hope everybody will indulge me. I spent some time going over this. And while I still have an opportunity to comment on it, let me get into just some of the things. On the overall that you're coming at, I hope you will focus on change conditions, because I see major change conditions. There's tremendous pressure to develop outside the urban service line. Land values have gone up so high that there's just natural pressures to see that land, those values realized. And then you add overlay over that the Fellsmere annexation desires. And the plan, I hope, will discuss in detail those pressures and how you deal with them. And in that regard, get into some cost-benefit analysis, given the fact that you still have considerable lands inside to develop. And maybe the preference should be outside, but that's just an overriding issue that has to be, in my mind, discussed.
Yeah, and let me just tell you, that's what, when we come to you with the future land use element, we will be getting in all those, and even more that you won't even want us to get into. We're going to get into residential allocation ratios. We're trying to do some work on commercial square footage needs based on population, location. Yes, those are good points.
On the success or failure of the comprehensive plan, and I don't think I speak as a minority. I think the one area where there's perceived, at least, to be the greatest failure has been in the transportation area. And I think that merits either put that boogeyman to bed, it's worked, or if in fact it's been a real failure, where, why, and how you deal with them. Going to the data, and I don't want to be controversial, certainly, but on there's 2 aspects of the data that I find troubling. On the population data, I think you have to take into account, call it a worst-case scenario. You're using numbers that show, and they're beeper numbers or official numbers, they show a growth factor of probably under 2%. depending, 1.9, I just heard Bob whisper. From an expert, I have an email, Mr. Bowling, who sent me information on what Port St. Lucie is estimating on their growth through 2020, and they're estimating a compound growth factor of close to 6%, 3 times ours. And those pressures that cause Port St. Lucie to develop, we're going to see them, I think. We are seeing them in the Fellsmere annexations and in the pressures to go outside the urban service line. I also got from Stan the numbers on what on what's our area to the north, Palm Bay. And Palm Bay is estimating a growth rate of about 5% a year. So you have the community to our south close to 6%, community to the north 5%, and we're starting off with, and I don't know the relevance of the data, but if it is relevant, I think you should show how your assumptions or your conclusions are affected if it's not 2%, but if it turns out to be 5-6%. On the economic data, you're missing, I think, I don't know the relevance of the economic data, what you're trying to prove with medium income and the like. But if, to the extent it is relevant, you're missing huge dollars. You're not, I don't think those numbers include government transfer payments. Our government transfer payments are close to the highest in the country. I'm talking about Social Security, I'm talking about Medicare, and possibly Medicaid, although I don't think there's much there. Plus, Bob, you don't build in, I don't think those numbers factor in retirement payments, pension plan payments, interest, dividends. The service industry has expanded in this county because there is income.
And let me just tell you, Bill is the staff person working on the economic development element, and he has hit all those. We go into transfer payments, and it's not in the introductory element. And the economic development element has been going through the Economic Development Council right now. It will get to you pretty soon for your reviews. But what we deal a lot more detail in all the economic numbers in the economic development element.
For some reason, they say the median income is this amount, and it excludes, well, for me, it probably shows nothing. I'm at the poverty level. My interest is not included, my dividend income is not included, my pension plans are not included, my Social Security is not included. I don't think any of that is in the numbers you're using.
I think it is. In median household income or median family income.
It wouldn't be as low as it is, Bob.
Actually...
Well, fine. Whatever the facts are.
Yeah.
Actually, I think you'll find that Fellsmere is responsible for bringing that median income down.
Part of what I was asking about these meetings is that we do get, it all filters up to us, and I didn't realize how long I'd been here when we did the last one of these in 1998. It started in 97 and some 06 before that. But I mean, the point is that if you have specific elements that you have real detailed information or want to dive into, you really need to pick it up on the way up here. I mean, because they have them they go into more detail. It'll be like on the water issues with some of these ag entities and other entities. It'll be you probably ought to take the time to insert yourself at the beginning. I didn't do that much the first time. I did it at the kind of the tail end, and it does help.
So, anybody else?
And does that mean you don't pay your dues tonight? Is that what?
We would have
the poverty level.
Yeah, you're breaking our heart, George.
We would.
I don't think
It's actually population survey data.
pension plans are in those numbers.
We'll send you actually, we'll send y'all a copy of the draft economic development element as far as we've got, so you can look at that. But any comments you have, we would appreciate them. Keep in mind, this is the least exciting part. More exciting next time, okay?
What exactly do you anticipate our role will be in this?
Approve.
No, actually, you all are leading it. The local planning agency has the responsibility for doing the EAR. You have the responsibility of transmitting that document to the Board of County Commissioners. You are getting a lot of assistance from the other county committees on the various elements. But it's really up to you how much time and effort you want to put in.
The chairman has to go over this daily.
Well, this is a responsibility that is established by state law, not by county law.
Yeah.
You're going to be looking at benefits too. I mean, you were referring to the jobs coming from the mall and things. Are you looking at jobs that get benefits? Are you looking at illegals and
that
all
was
that?
going to be my question. The cash society.
We try to stay out of the immigration issue. I think that
it's a huge factor.
I think it's a big factor in this county.
So how can you avoid it?
And you get a good point. And when we do, what I've been telling staff is, when you go through and collect data, when you're analyzing data, keep in mind the goals and objectives we have, the objectives and policies. How is it that we would address immigration? You know, what would be our objectives? What kind of policies would we have at the county level regarding immigration? Yes, we do need to acknowledge, say, there are illegals here working in the groves or the packing houses or in some other places. But, you know, always keep in the back of your mind, because this is the whole concept of planning. What do you want to achieve and how are you going to do it?
Measurable goals. I like the idea, though, measurable goals.
If I'm hearing from you that this is the entire backbone of our comprehensive plan.
Yeah, let me just tell you, this is a requirement from the state that makes a lot of sense. Now, at the MPO level, the feds say every 5 years do a new long-range plan. Well, that's good, but I like the state a lot better. The state says, on a regular basis, you take your plan and you evaluate it. You appraise it. You find out where it worked, where it didn't work. You document all that, put it in a report, and then the next year you go and amend your plan to incorporate all that. That, to me, makes a lot of sense. So this is a redoing of our comp plan. The EAR is the basis for us redoing our comp plan.
Also, like Bob said, this is really the big picture, the most important thing, how we would like the county to look like. Our plan is a 20-year plan. Also, day by day, we do a bunch of other, like, site planning stuff, this kind of a thing that they are not really planning, but this is what we really get. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, but these are the things that we really get excited about, because you actually sit down and analyze the data and try to come up with the solution and whatever. And for you to tell us again how you would like the county to look like and how we could, with the policies and objectives, go to that way, to get to where we want to be in 20 years.
Let's establish a grid system, guys.
I think one of the interesting things about the planning process right now is the immediacy of the pressure on the urban service line. I mean, we all understand that. And to me, a large part of that is this transition away from agriculture. And I really appreciated the article that you had in there on finding new cash crops. And we hear about things like that many times, but I don't see much input from the commission or many people to try to assist in maintaining those agricultural areas out there. I think that's very, very important. And I noticed in that article that there's a legislator in the state who is trying to do some things with federal monies. And I know most people, subsistence is a bad word, but there are some new ways of doing some things to assist people that want to maintain those agricultural areas and get some diversity to it also. And I think that's super important in our in an immediate planning process in Indian River County, because it's really easy to develop something, and right now it's pretty tough for agricultural people to stay in business, and they need all the help they can get.
What time frame do we have to complete this EAR? We have to have it adopted in December 2008, and that seems like a long ways away, but it's not.
We'll have to have it done we'll have our part done by September.
Yeah, September, October at the latest.
Because it's got to go
A
to
year
the
from this
PCC
September,
after us,
yes.
And, I mean, it's last time we were done, I think, about the 1st of October.
And like Sasan said, you may want to think some of these more controversial and detailed elements, we may want to have some special workshops on them. Land use we'll probably spend a lot of time with you on, and that's where ag preservation is in there. And these are good thoughts. Keep in mind for when we get to the objectives part and the policy part, what we want to achieve and how we want to go about doing it.
Good. Next item, staff's analysis.
Is this something we have to approve with as we go, or can we do this at lump sum at the end? We don't approve these elements tonight, do we?
No.
Oh, okay.
Stan.
Okay, item 7D. If it sounds like my voice hurts, it really doesn't, so let's see how long it lasts.
You want us to get Sasan to take over?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. No, he does real planning. I'll just do this stuff. Let's get somebody.
I don't think you'll ever live that one down.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. What we provided you all for this packet is a matrix laying out the 52 ideas that were expressed at the April 25th workshop, and a couple of points that I just wanted to make briefly. First of all, that was your workshop. I think you all as a group have a lot of discretion and time to work out what you want to do with the information that you received. The matrix we prepared was to try to help you all make a decision and look at it and try to group it. A lot of the ideas that were thrown out were fairly big picture ideas, and they really fit well into the EAR process. And so 42 of the 52, we identified where they fit into the EAR. 10 of them are non-EAR, and some of them are observations. Some are things for you all to discuss. One thing I want to point out about this, and just because someone expresses an idea doesn't mean it's a good idea. Believe it or not, it may conflict with other ideas that are given. You know, you hear one thing and it sounds great, and then you hear another one and you're like,
did you hear that, George?
Better. It's the same thing when we say these ideas will be considered. If you decide that an idea is worth considering, it doesn't mean that you're adopting it. It means you're going to consider it, and it may not come out in the wash. I mean, it may go through the process and change or merge or what have you. So just because an idea makes it on the list doesn't mean it's going to make it through the process. And again, some of the ideas that are expressed, they might conflict, or they might go together, but have to be amended. I think it's important when you all look at this list to prioritize what's important. Are there any that you want to eliminate or not pursue at this point in time? It's up to you all what you want to do. The other thing, kind of look at the context of all this. Just that we have gone through, as you all know, for probably the last 3 years, a lot of different land development regulation initiatives, and there have been a lot of parallel initiatives, and some of them conflicted, but we did them anyway. And we still have a list of LDR requirements that we haven't gotten to yet, because we're kind of doing them as we can. What we hope is that a lot of these issues that are good issues do get into the EAR process, get into the comp plan, and get LDR amendments done, and look at it as a whole because they interrelate. One of the things that we've talked about every time we've come in with an LDR amendment, kind of what are the costs and so forth. And we heard a lot about costs this afternoon at the impact fee workshop. And one thing, you talk about have times changed since the last EAR? Well, times have changed in the last 18 months. And one of the issues that I think we've got to look at, what's the current context we're in, and that's the cost of regulations, the cost of policies. I think cost benefits going to be more and more scrutinized given the times we are in. And I think that reevaluating some things and prioritizing some things are going to be important. I also think that's going to be important in terms of the overall resources that local governments, including this county, are going to have in the coming years. Very well, we may have less than we have now. We may not be able to do what we're doing now. We may have to reprioritize things. And I just think that that's a context when you're looking at, if you look at this as a wish list, I just think there's a real reality check, and that's why I think prioritizing is going to be important as you all go through these things. But anyway, that's my bit. It's up to you all how you'd like to handle it. I don't know if you agree with the way we laid it out, what fits into the EAR or not, but our ears are open.
Just one question that I have is, what does staff see in this list that you feel is attainable, and what do you feel is kind of like pie in the sky?
I think a lot of things on this list are attainable if somebody else pays for them, or we get them through, because some of these are attainable through development plan exactions and so forth. And it's a great question. I'm not sure that we know how they would even necessarily come out of the EAR process necessarily.
I agree with a lot of what Stan says. I have a recommendation. I think Stan makes a lot of valid points. The problem I see is you've got 49 items and they can get lost very quickly. And I put them into 6 buckets. Mm-hmm. And my recommendation is we put them into the buckets, and I think as I go through the buckets, you'll see some of them will self-execute.
How do you mean execute?
Let me go through it. First of all, there's the green program. That's on a track. Commissioner O'Brien has taken the lead. There are workshops, everything to do with that. And perhaps there could be one P&Z commissioner that worked with Commissioner O'Brien to bring something back to us at some point. The second one is the Architectural Review Board, and there are about 5-6 of your items that fall under that, and that's in process with the architects, the American Institute of Architects. They've undertaken to develop a recommendation that will give us something to argue about or talk about. And I would think by fall they'll have something. And that would take 6, 7, no cost, no staff time until they produce something. Then you have a basket of environmental issues that I would almost ask Dr. Cox and the Audubon Society to, maybe there's 10 of them that are in this 49, and get them to come back with concrete suggestions. Perhaps somebody, one of the P&Z commissioners would work with them on that. And then you've got the big picture issues that you're going to cover in the EAR process that are necessarily going to have to be discussed. Transfer of development rights is a huge issue. But I'm assuming that that's going to be picked up in the EAR. Then there's the boogeyman for me, there's the transportation issues. And I don't know how, there's about 5-6 items that fall into there. I don't know who does it, how it gets done, how they get addressed. but they're big. And then you got the balance, and the balance is very few issues, I think, are then left. So what I'd go over, I'd revise this, Stan, and put them into those 6 buckets. The green, the Architectural Review Board, those are in process. They're being done by others. If this commission agrees, ask Dr. Cox and Audubon to pick up, there's a half a dozen environmental points. Let them pick it up. You guys pick out your EAR issues, the mixed-use zoning. There's just a whole slew of issues that I got to believe you're going to be all over. The transportation issues, I don't have any recommendation. They're big. A lot of transportation ideas were thrown out.
You want Chris to take a first stab at that?
I'm not prepared to recommend that, but if that's the recommendation of the other commission, that's what you want, sure.
What would you propose?
Well, one of the ways that
the county spent about
$15,000?
X thousands of dollars and bring in some experts and sort through it. But that ain't, we don't have that money, and I don't know if the county commission's going to do that. And I don't think, I mean, we saw it today on route on
US 1?
510 and the intersection. Someday it's going to be in place.
Well, and from staff's perspective, we thought it was important not to have these slip through the cracks either, which is why we looked at how so many of them are going to plug into the EAR. So actually, we would be concerned about not plugging most of these into the EAR process. And plus, there's kind of a matter of efficiency. That's looking at it in the context. And again, I'm going to point out one item here real quick. If you look at on page 4, item 17, I think there was quite a bit of tension between some of the suggestions about taking a qualitative aesthetic approach and giving that equal weight to quantitative. All for the last couple of years going through traffic concurrency has been quantitative, and you don't meet the quantitative, and we also get pretty consistent comments, well, the quantitative doesn't work. And then we have these other suggestions, well, let's do away with all of these quantitative approaches on US 1. Let's change the level of service on US 1 and make it pretty and let people sit in traffic maybe a few more minutes between Sebastian and Vero. I mean, these aren't, these conflict, or they've got to get worked out. Somebody's gonna lose, somebody's gonna win, whatever, however you want to put it, on these approaches. And I think the EAR is the perfect environment, because you're not just looking at transportation, looking at land use and some of the other factors as well. But these, I mean, if you were to say, Chris or Mr. Expert or Mrs. Expert from wherever, here are all these issues, well, I can tell you, I mean, they conflict, and they're good, valid points, but they don't fit together.
There's some
they get washed out.
Some of these, Stan, are going to be very, very difficult, and you're not going to solve them. But you should discuss them.
Sure.
And the EAR can do that. On the other hand, take the Architectural Review Board. That'll find its way into your work, but let the architects proceed with it. Let them come up with something substantive, and then you've got something to work with.
Right. They'll tell us to lower impact fees, too, by the way.
Pardon?
They'll tell us to lower impact fees while we're at it.
Oh, I'm sure. And, there's ideas here. There was a big idea that it costs too much to build a commercial building.
They'll ask you to add them up right first.
Yeah, that's right.
Watch TV.
I mean, there's stuff that's, somebody argued that commercial buildings cost too much to build. And I had a developer tell me that's answered in 3 words. Land's too expensive.
Right.
But that would be my recommendation, that we drop it into these buckets. We get a commissioner to work with with Commissioner O'Brien. The Architecture Review Board, that's running. We asked Dr. Cox and Audubon to pick out the environmental issues and let them propose something with meat on it. You guys take all the big picture issues on the EAR. Transportation,
Where do you go?
Then you got the bucket of what's left, and there's not going to be a lot.
Is that the leftovers bucket?
Leftover bucket.
The only thing is, at some point, you do have to prioritize this.
Yep.
And are you talking about prioritizing by buckets, or are you talking about
No,
prioritizing by?
the green is going, the Architectural Review Board is going, the environmental, let Cox come up with specifics, and then you can prioritize. EAR.
They're not exclusive.
This gentleman will prioritize.
EARs will hit a lot, almost.
Right, and we do the transportation element is one of the EAR elements.
You're going to hit it in the EAR when you hit transportation.
I'm just not sure you're going to hit it very,
But you're going to have the opportunity.
Impact you have is,
pardon, sir?
how much impact you have is the.
I'm not sure, well, I don't have a lot of confidence there. But
Well, actually, my MPO staff is doing the EAR work, and we've already been to the MPO committees for the data and analysis, and we're still working on that.
They'll be gone before you get there. You've got to get, if you want to make, you need to get to these lower committees.
Well, no, we will be bringing these to the P&Z too, but when we deal with objectives and policies in the transportation element, that's your opportunity to make changes. And environmental, we're going to be bringing the land use element, the conservation element, the coastal element. All of these hit environmental heavily, too.
So does transportation. Just think about how much pavement
all of the elements.
If you're going to, I'm just curious about something. If we're going to do the buckets, then does that mean, are we going to get a new sheet that would kind of reorder?
We have buckets here.
Like another matrix?
I'd be glad to work with Stan.
I think what you'd find if you did put it in these buckets, that you'd find some ideas bubbling to the top of each bucket.
Prioritize each.
And you could probably work it that way.
Work with Stan and come up with.
I think you've done a good job on the water. The way you've listed the water here, which is the first one, and that could be a separate bucket, separate from the environmental.
I like that bucket for water.
You've got the right. Yeah.
Water in the bucket.
You've got the right committees looking into it, and it's utilities should do this, I think, and they are doing it. So
Right.
that's kind of that's supposed to come along.
Okay, you want to?
I'll work with Stan.
Do you want to work with Stan? You want to make a motion? Recommendation?
If it's a question of coming back with something specific with buckets, I'll work with Stan and we'll come back.
Yeah, I think, I prefer to let him work with that, and if he
See if it floats.
instead of having a motion, I don't need a motion if you don't.
Yeah, and what we would intend to do is continue to, to use the input into the EAR, like we've indicated.
I think this is all going to fit very well.
Right.
That was my point, is that the buckets are fine, but where they decide, or where we decide to place these in the EARs is where you're going to have your impact, and how quick you hit that system. That's what you want to sort it out to. Is right.
Very discreet.
What is it you want us to work on for the next meeting?
EAR-wise.
I'd like a direction here. I don't want to just willy-nilly, okay, this is really serious stuff, very serious. So what is it you want me to do for homework right now?
You can take a look at the introductory element and the intergovernmental coordination element, what we gave you, the data and analysis, anything we missed needs to be added, any corrections, things like that.
Okay, so this is something we're not going to do tonight. This is something you want us to bring back to you with any comments in the next meeting?
Right. We just presented it to you tonight, and anytime you have any comments, you can give them to us.
Okay. Do we have any other? Any other planning?
Just one thing I just wanted to mention, and I think what George Hammer was bringing up is that this is such an expansive effort that some of you all will be more interested in some aspects than others. So now that this time around we have email, we can probably do more by email in between meetings, and when you have comments or questions, call or email something, and we can attach things and such. And I think that what you'll find is some of you all will dig into particular aspects of it or buckets and be heavier in that input process. But let's communicate by phone and email too in between meetings.
How is this going to fit in with Sunshine?
Well, from individual P&Z members to staff is not a problem. We won't indicate what other
no
P&Z
communication among us, but
right
directly with you.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Is there a way to share those emails at a public meeting?
I mean, can we
Yeah,
email everybody?
they could
instead of-
compile and distribute them. The staff could compile the emails and distribute them like they do the information packets. There's really not a prohibition against exchange of information, but there is a prohibition against sharing your thoughts about that information outside of the public meeting.
So the emails could be shared, and we could discuss them at the public meeting if we wanted to.
Well, as long as the email doesn't say, let's change it and do this, or I want to vote this way.
Right. We're going to share Dr. Baker's letter. We're going to email that to you all, and any response that Eric Olson, Utilities Director, has, we'll do the same. And so
Can we copy everybody on an email? When we have to be precise, right?
As long as it's informational, but I think it'd be better to go through staff. If they have questions, they can run it by us, and we can say that's fine or it's a problem.
Memorial Day week.
I guess that brings up one real quick point here. On that Falcon Trace thing, it would be nice if you'd go ahead and email the whole Planning and Zoning Commission just as soon as you have that information, because what ends up happening is we get these packets, and if we're going to be spending a lot of time on Falcon Trace, so it'd be nice to know as early as possible. That
Right.
we don't.
Yeah, that's a good point. What I've done is email the chairman when we found out a few days ago that Falcon Trace.
I just went ahead and forwarded that email to the whole commission, but it'd be better if you just.
Sure, I'll do that. Thanks.
Okay.
Your ball.
Attorneys matters.
I was just asking. I said we're waiting on you.
The Top Hat and Tails Kennel has sought judicial review of the board's decision not to approve their kennel, and we received an order to show cause why relief should not be granted. The double R&D comprehensive plan amendment north of County Road 510 has filed suit, and we filed a motion to dismiss. The source, there were a number of pleadings filed in that matter, but the one that's been ruled on the first was a motion by the source to prohibit the county commission from hearing that on the merits. That motion or that plea was denied, and at this point the county commission can hear it on the merits, although the source has filed a motion for rehearing, which should be heard within a week or two. A motion for rehearing on the judge's decision.
Motion to stay in the county.
No, the motion to prohibit the county from hearing the issue on the merits was denied. The source has requested a rehearing on that issue before the court.
So the county can, subject to the rehearing, the county can proceed with the source hearing.
If the court is not persuaded that it erred, yes, they'll proceed. That's all.
Looks like we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Well, which project?
It was a comp plan amendment.